Good morning, stream. It's a lovely rainy day here in Oregon. And today we are reading Shadeborn. Shadeborn, a Book of Underrealm. Let's just read the front matter. Shadeborn, Gary Robinson, copyright 2017 by Legacy Books. All rights reserved. Cover copyright 2017 by Legacy Books is a work of fiction. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, business events, or locales is purely coincidental. Reproduction in whole or in part of this publication without express written consent is strictly prohibited. The author greatly appreciates you taking the time to read his work. Please leave a review wherever you bought the book or on Goodreads.com. Interior design. Legacy Books Inc., publisher Legacy Books Inc., editors Karen Conlon and Cassadine, cover artist Ariu Rangvesh. 1 Fantasy Epic, 2 Fantasy Dark, 3 Fantasy New Adult. Second edition, published by Legacy Books. To my wife, who gave me this idea, to my children, who just make life better, to Johnny, Sean, and Dave, who told me to write, and to my rebels, don't forget why you left the woods. Get more. Legacy Books is home to the very best that fantasy has to offer. Join our email alerts list, and we'll send word whenever we release a new book. You'll receive exclusive updates and see behind the scenes we create them. You also You also learn secrets that make great fantasy books great. Interested, visit this link, underrealm.net/join. For maps, this locations, book, visit underrealm.net/maps. Gotta draw some more maps one of these days. Shadeborn, a Book of Underrealm. Garrett Robinson. Chapter 1. Lauren slouched in her seat, searching and failing to find any reason why this day should be better than the one before. Her companion still lay upstairs in slumber. Even Albert had not yet risen, though the boyer always woke before the coming of the sun. But Lauren had been awake through the night, unable to close her eyes for fear of what she would see in her dreams. So a cup of wine had turned into 2, and then a bottle and some food. Just as the moon set, now the sky outside crept towards the gray of dawn. The innkeeper Mag stood behind the counter, polishing it with a damp rag that to Lauren's mind it shone bright. Hey, Haley, good morning. Got a little throat thing going on this morning. Hopefully it makes my voice sound nice and deep. Every so often the woman would gaze around the room, observing those within, the early wakers who had joined Lauren for breakfast, or the nighttime arrivals who had come to the city of Northwood for purposes unknown and mayhap best not asked after. Mag's gaze never sought Lauren in particular, but neither did it shy away. In the days since Lauren and her friends had first arrived at the inn, that was what Lauren appreciated the most. Whatever thoughts Mag kept to herself outwardly, she never treated Lauren differently from any other customer. Lauren could not say the same for the others, who mostly sought to avoid her gaze. Either that, or they tried to draw her into conversation, speaking soft words she was not yet ready to hear. All of them except Chet, of course. Mag noticed Lauren's empty goblet, hers the keen eyes of a barkeep with experience. She sidled out from behind the thick oak counter and made her way across the room. Without a word, she scooped up the goblet as well as an empty bowl. Will you be wanting anything else, love? The words held neither judgment nor too much concern. It was as though Lauren was any other girl who happened to be visiting the inn, yet in that plain tone Lauren thought she heard another kind of care. Another glass of wine would suit me well, except that I feel my debt to you grows large, said Lauren. When will you let me cease to be a burden and pay for my custom like the rest of your patrons? Another time, mayhap, but not yet. Mag swept up the cup and dropped it in the bowl before returning to the bar. From the shelf, she pulled a clean cup for Lauren's wine, then another which she filled with ale. She brought them both to the table until Lauren's surprise took the seat opposite. Now at last she means to speak her mind, thought Lauren. She should have expected it. Mag had seemed more understanding, less intrusive than any of the others, but she must have felt the way they did all along and chosen now to finally say something. Lauren wondered idly why she had waited so long. I have heard what the others say to you, trying to urge you towards better spirits, said Mag. You must know that they are wrong, and that this is not something you should try to hasten. Lauren blinked. Those are not the words I thought to hear. I imagine not, said Mag, smiling gently and sipping her ale. You thought I would lend my voice to theirs. They seem to think they know what is best for me, no matter whether I wish to hear it or not. Lauren took a pull from her own cup, a deeper and longer drink than Mag's. Yet you will notice that Albern has not joined them in their insistence, nor would I. He and I have seen many dark times together. Both of us have felt lost. Both of us have done deeds we wish we could undo, deeds that have haunted us every day since. Lauren saw a flash of a broken body draped in a red cloak. She saw an arrow protruding from a thigh and a hateful man crawling through the dirt. She shivered and blinked hard, drinking again in desperation. Mag's hand came gently to rest upon Lauren's. Only time can rid us of these wounds. You are fortunate to have that time. Take it as much as you need. Let the pictures in your mind's eye fade away one by one until they trouble you no longer, neither while you sleep nor in your waking hours. It is not something you should try to hurry along, unless the healing stops on its own. Lauren picked at the cuff of her sleeve. Though it had been only a few days since they came to Northwood, she had seen no improvement in her mood, nor in the dark thoughts that plagued her day and night. And what if it does? What did you and Albern do when the darkness in your minds refused to leave you? Only then are you close to the end. Embracing our grief plants the seed of healing, and once it is well laid, we must take it upon ourselves to foster the growth. If that crop lies untended, it twists within the earth. That is a sorry harvest, and one you have likely seen before. The drunkard who cannot think to spend his time anywhere but the tavern, his coin spent only on oblivion. The wine soured in Lauren's mouth. You might as well say what you mean, her coin, yet you will not take mine. Mag's mouth twisted in a stern frown. If I meant to rebuke you, I would do it without bandying words. I only mean to tell you that when the time comes for your next step, you must take it, or in truth you shall truly lose yourself. We get it. It's true. For fuck's sake, Mag. I only mean to tell you when the time comes for your next step, you must take it or you shall lose yourself. In the music, the moment, you own it. You better never let it go. How awesome would it be if Mag just broke into Eminem right now? It's the truest thing, Haley. It is so true. There is so much truth. You can't handle the truth. Okie dokes. Had to enter. Actually, you know what? I gotta do a thing. I gotta do a thing. Bum, 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 bum. I really do love Asana, but it doesn't order its tasks very well when you go to like your incomplete tasks. Like I create my tasks in a certain order, and then when it files them into tasks that need to be done today, it just kind of shoots them all over the place in some weird random order that I don't understand. And like I'll happily create my tasks differently so that they all end up where they're supposed to go, but I can't figure out the logic to it. Asana does what I need it to do pretty well. I really like that it gives me the ability to I can switch back and forth between what needs to be done period and what needs to be done right now. So like, okay, this project needs to happen and here's all the steps that need to happen in the order that they need to happen and assign them to people and then assign any due dates that I have. Okay, cool. I've created that project. Now, go to my task list and what do I have on my task list for today, you know? That is obviously like one of the basics of a productivity of I guess any productivity app really, but it feels like that is what I like the most. That is very important to me. And then being able to really easily reorganize what I'm supposed to do like today. Okay. There could be something better than a sauna. And one day when Asana no longer does what I need it to do, then, when I have grown beyond Asana, then I will find something else. You shouldn't feel bad about it, Haley, unless unless it's actually actively stopping you from what you're producing. But like compare you going and like you go and you check out all of the different productivity apps and everything like that. There are guys who go to Home Depot every weekend just to look just to look at better hammers, Like, oh hey, I know my hammer does what I need it to do perfectly well, but look at this hammer. It's got a claw attachment. It's like, you know, maybe if you just took the hammer that you already had and built the cabinet, that'd be better. But it's fun. It's their hobby. Just realize that it is a hobby. Like, it is something that you do for fun. That's totally fine. Okay, the hammer was maybe not the best analogy. Do. Action can help you along the road, any action, though deeds filled with purpose are best, or sometimes the comfort of another can be our medicine. That boy Chet, for example. He is trying. Often have we gone walking in the birchwood, and under its eaves with him I find something closer to peace than I do with the others, with their soft words and careful glances. Mag gave her a look that lasted a moment too long, and Lauren blushed. Quickly she took another swallow of wine to hide it. You should eagerly embrace anything that helps, said Mag stoically, and Lauren thought she heard the hint of a smile behind the words. Remember, do not let the others push you sooner than you are ready. There will be time enough for their cares later. First you must tend to yourself. Boots clumped heavily down the stairs at the back. Lauren looked up to see Albert descending into the common room. He gave her a quick glance and a half-hearted smile. Mag rose quickly and went to the bar with him there to take his order and fetch his breakfast. Lauren sat in the quiet and thought upon the innkeeper's words. She did not have long to enjoy her solitude. Soon Albert joined her at the table with his eggs and a rasher of bacon. He spoke no word to her, but he did not have Mag's skill at hiding his curious eyes. And soon Lauren heard Boots upon the stairs again and looked up to see Zane glowering there. The wizard's limbs had gone thin and bony, his cheeks so gaunt that from the outside she could see his teeth pressing against the flesh. His hair was thinning now. Lauren knew that if she tugged on it, it would come out in clumps. He was like a specter of death, and the effect was not lost on the room's other inhabitants. Some had drunk too much to care, but others averted their eyes or stood to leave with quick muttered excuses, though there was no one close enough to hear them. Zane seemed not to notice, or mayhap he did not care. He stalked towards Lauren and drew out the chair beside hers, slumping in his seat as his eyebrows drew still closer together. He leaned close, his voice a harsh whisper, though Lauren was sure it carried to every corner of the quiet room. Tell me you have had enough at last of sulking and are ready to take the road again. Zane, said Albert in a warning tone. His fingers tightened on the handle of his mug. And a good morrow to you, fair sir, said Lauren. She tried to make the words light, but could not entirely keep an edge from them. Break fast with us, I pray, and help yourself to some fine wine. She held her cup before him, wiggling it back and forth. Zane failed to appreciate the humor. He snatched the cup from her to drain it in a single gulp. I take it you do not mean to move on, then. Do you think we have an eternity to waste? Have we spent an eternity here already, Albert? Said Lauren, looking towards the bowyer with feigned wonder. Sky above, I thought it had been a few days only. Your jests are stale and grow more so each time the sun passes us, said Zane. When will we speak, away from this room and its prying ears? Day after day passes, yet still you will not tell me that which you once thought so urgent. She knew full well what the wizard meant. They had not yet decided where they must go next, and Lauren had grave counsel for him, which might shed light upon their path. But that counsel had come from Jordell the mystic, and he had died moments after uttering the words. Recalling them now was akin to recalling the man, and Lauren could not think of him without her heart wanting to stop in grief. Nor had the past week made it any easier, for in Northwood she had learned a dark truth, the truth about herself and about the cruel man she had shot in the thigh, the man she had once called father, but whom by her own hand no one would speak to ever again. Soon, said Lauren, her voice quieter than she meant it to be. I promise you, only give me a little more time. My grief still presses itself too close upon me. Zane growled. His gaze darted about as though searching for another argument. Without thinking, he picked at his coat sleeve. A deep hunger gnawed at him, Lauren knew, and his mind was not entirely his own. She was only grateful it was not like last time when his thoughts had grown so dark that she had feared to be in the same room as him. Good morn, said a familiar voice, a warm and welcome sound. Chet appeared by Lauren's side. Good morn, said Lauren quickly. She rose from a chair before Zane could choose his next bitter words. But she had moved too fast, forgetting the many cups of wine that had passed her lips. She lurched and nearly fell, and would have had she not seized the edge of the table. She steadied herself quickly, cheeks flushing with embarrassment. "I thought to greet the sun from under the branches of the birchwood. Would you join me?" Chet looked worried. "Are you sure you need no rest? Did you find any sleep last night?" "Who needs sleep when the world is waking? Come." Lauren seized his arm and nearly dragged him from the table, taking each step carefully to see that she did not stumble. As they walked away together, she thought she saw Albern trying to hide a smile. Chapter 1, Jean! Oh, shoot. This stream is totally incorrectly titled. Bottom. There we go. All right. Chapter 2. The crisp air of morning did much to clear her head, and she drank it in with a long breath. If she was honest with herself, it felt better to walk with Chet than to sit at her table and drink, but sometimes facing the wine was easier. Dawn's thin gray light was just creeping into the sky from the east, and Northwood had begun to stir into wakefulness. She heard the sharp hiss of a smith's forge firing up, and the first tentative squalls of cocks greeting the day. Heh, cocks. But they met few faces upon the streets, and for that Lauren was grateful. It let them walk to the northern gate with few curious eyes to see them. She no longer held much fear that her many enemies had followed her here, and yet that fewer people who saw them within Northwood, the better. A single guard sat at a table by the open gate. She was well accustomed to seeing Chet and Lauren take their walks, and gave them only a cursory glance before turning back to the game of moons that lay before her. Soon Lauren and Chet found themselves among the trees of the forest they had once called home. A few steps farther still, and Northwood had vanished behind them, blocked from view by the trunks. Now Lauren felt herself truly relaxed, as though the last cobwebs had been swept from the edges of her mind. Here within the wood her eyes saw things differently. Bent blades of grass told her of the passing of a deer, and when she heard a skittering within a bush she knew it at once for the rustling of a vole. The forest was altogether different from the world of men, and she had greatly missed it since she left. It was all the more enjoyable because she knew Chet saw it just as she did. Sometimes they would speak as they walked, other times as now they walked in silence and let their feet carry them where they would. They found a narrow brook making its eager way to join the Melnar in the south. In silent agreement they turned to find a crossing upstream. Soon they came upon one, a place where the banks rose high above the surface of the water and drew together, close enough for a long jump to carry them across. Just as they reached the other side, the sun peeked its face above the branches of the eastern trees, and all the birds of the birchwood burst into song together. Soon they found themselves in a clearing some 30 paces across, with a great stone in the middle like a tombstone. There they sat, their backs against the rock, its cool surface chilling them after the eager pace of their walk. Chief among the reasons Lauren enjoyed their walks was that Chet seemed content with silence or with speech as Lauren wished. He would converse with her eagerly, answering questions about what had happened in their village since she left. From him she had learned of her mother who had vanished without a trace the same day Lauren had. Lauren had some half-remembered notion of family in one of the northern outland kingdoms and assumed her mother had gone to find them. Too, Chet had told her that sometime after his mother passed away, his father had begun to court Miss Aisley. Lauren thought that a fine pairing, though Chet himself seemed unsure just what to think of it. But when Lauren wished for silence, silence was what Chet gave her. Now he simply looked with her into the trees, his hands toying with a stick he had snatched from the ground. Together they reveled in a quiet comfort, and without any pressure to speak, Lauren found her tongue moved more freely of its own accord. In the city of Wellmont, I was caught trying to steal a man's purse, she began. Chet glanced at her and smirked. I thought you were a great thief. Is that a lie for you to be so easily caught? I was not easily caught, said Lauren, shoving his shoulder. I was betrayed by my own kindness. I saw the man beating his son and thought to relieve him of his coin, but then at the last moment I thought the child might relish a life free from his father. That was a mistake. The moment I made the offer, he told his father of my words, and the father called the constables. A foolish boy, said Chet lightly. He could have gone with you and been pitched headlong into mortal danger, but at least he would not have beaten him. Mayhap, said Lauren quietly. She had not meant to turn the conversation towards a father and his child, for that subject reminded her too closely of things she would rather not think of. But in any case, the constables brought us to their quarters within the city, and there, to his shock as well as mine, I found Jordell inside. I will remember the surprise on his face and the anger forever. Chet grew quiet as he always did when her words turned to Jordell. Chet had never met the mystic, something Lauren desperately regretted. It seemed a crime that anyone should not have known the man, as great as he was, as quiet and heartfelt his praise, and as cold and terrible his wrath. She doubted she would meet his like ever again. What surprised me then, though it should not have, was how quickly Jordell guessed at what was going on. As soon as he heard that I had been caught stealing from the woodsman, his eyes grew sharp with suspicion. With barely a glance, he seemed to know the whole tale, and he was as merciless with the father as the father was with the son. And though his anger with me remained, it softened and turned more to annoyance, as though he thought I was right to do as I did, though his duty meant he could not say so. Her voice drew dangerously close to a tremble. One tear leaked from her eyes, so she leaned her cheek on her fine black cloak where it draped over her arm to soak up the drop and hide it. Once more the clearing was silent save for the morning bird song. She spoke again into the stillness, forcing her voice to remain steady. Where did they find my father? Chet glanced at her from the corner of his eye and then looked away again. It is no tale for a day so beautiful. Likely it is too ugly for any day that may come to pass. Tell me then, and let its darkness fade away once and for all. You have seen too much evil of late. I would not bring more upon you, not at least until you are ready. When I tell you this tale, I wish to tell it only once and in full, so that we need never speak of it again. Then tell it now, said Lauren. Chet sighed. Then he pushed himself from the rock and sidled over to sit in front of her, his eyes fixed on hers, though she turned her gaze away. His corpse was a league south of the village when we found it. He lay on his belly, his head turned to the side, eyes open and staring. There was no blood in his spittle, but it had frothed greatly and gathered around his lips. Lauren swallowed hard. She knew what would come next, the tale of his wound, the one that had slowly bled him out beneath the trees of the same forest in which they now sat. Chet watched her, gauging her reaction. She kept her face as still as she could. We could see at once that he had bled to death. Though the fletching had broken from the arrow, the shaft still stuck from his thigh. It had struck a vein or nicked it as he crawled, and all his lifeblood had drained out. The trail of it stretched far away south, perhaps half a league more. And when we followed it, we found at the end the signs of a struggle. Between him and, I guessed, you, but also a third person who we did not know. I hazarded another guess that it was the wizard the constable sought. You were right in that, said Lauren, glad her voice had remained steady. That was Zane. My father nearly strangled the life from him. He would have if you had not stopped him, said Chet quietly, and he might have killed you, too. Lauren remembered the fight as though it were happening again. She saw the spite that filled her father's eyes, the spittle that flew from his lips with each hateful word, and now she imagined him crawling north after the fight, the shaft protruding from his flesh, his life pouring into the dirt beneath him. She saw him shuddering and convulsing as he died at last, and wondered if he had spent his last words cursing her. His final words, because we just said last. Spent his final words cursing... Oh. Spent his final words cursing her, his own flesh and blood, whom he had never given anything so wasteful as love. Likely my words cannot help you, said Chet, but you should not blame yourself. You restrained your hand beyond all reason. You might have planted your arrow in his eye or his heart. You did not. You tried to show mercy, and mayhap if he had stayed where he was, he would not have died in the end. But Lauren knew better. She remembered when she would chop her father's logs for him, how he would come and threaten her so that she would work faster. And she remembered how he would take her into the woods and beat her, his thick and meaty fists leaving bruises beneath her clothing that would last for weeks. And she remembered going back to chopping his logs and gripping the axe tightly in her hands and picturing it lodged in his skull or in his back. Hey, good morning, Sim Lover. Her breath came faster as her thoughts raced on. Images flashed through her mind's eye, the corpse and the arrow and the axe and the corpse and the spittle and the blood and the corpse again. And then the corpse became Jordel's, and she saw his twisted body upon the floor of the valley that lay between the arms of the great rocks. She fought the urge to vomit and rolled to her hands and knees. Lauren, cried Chet. He knelt by her side and placed a hand on her shoulder. Lauren pushed him off, breathing faster until stars danced in her vision and her head spun. She tried lifting her gaze to look upon the sky, but she could see only blackness where there should have been blue. Black and blue like my bruises. She screamed and slammed a fist into the earth and then struck again and again. Her fist flew into the boulder and she felt the skin of her knuckles break. The pain gave her focus and she clutched her hand to her chest. At last she could sit back without her gorge rising. Rage turned to hot, bitter tears that left their trails of grief upon her cheeks. Chet sat beside her with one arm around her shoulder and his other hand cradling her mangled one. It was not your fault, he kept murmuring. It was not your fault. Soon she felt in control again, and as she had so often, she took her rage and her grief and hid them away deep inside herself where no one else could see. At last she looked up at Chet and tried to smile, but she feared she only looked sick, for his look of concern deepened. I am all right, she said softly. I am all right. Come, the children will have risen, and they are likely driving the others mad. She rose shakily to her feet, shrugging off Chet's helping hand. Together they set off into the trees, walking slowly now, but Lauren no longer saw the green of the leaves nor the crystal clarity of the brook as they crossed it. She saw only black and blue and the red of blood. Oh, chapter 3. Oh, God. Jem had been an urchin child when Lauren found him on the streets of Cabras, hungry and picking pockets in the service of a guild of young thieves. Annis had been a daughter of wealth and plenty, her every whim tended to by the comforts her mother's coin had afforded. Their circumstances could scarce have been more different, Yet they had surprised Lauren equally since their arrival in Northwood, for both of them had spent every spare moment helping Mag around the inn. From tending the stables to running drinks and meals to visitors when the common room grew busy, they took eagerly to even the meanest task. Neither had been raised in a life of honest work, and yet they took their roles as Mag's helpers very seriously. They seemed to enjoy Northwood greatly. Lauren told herself that one reason she had lingered so long was to give them a rest, which they greatly deserved. Even to her own ears, though, that excuse sounded thin and flimsy. "With the cook's compliments," said Jem, arriving at the table with a tray upon which he had balanced 5 bowls of stew. "And the ladies," said Anna, swooping in with another tray that held 5 mugs of ale and 2 loaves of bread. "Our blessings upon the cook and the lady," said Albert, scooping up his bowl and his mug. He tucked in with great abandon, tearing the heel from one of the loaves and dipping it into the stew. The sun was nearing the horizon, and many within the town had joined the inn's tenants for supper and a drink. The common room buzzed heavily with talk and occasional bursts of laughter. Lauren could hear the plucking of strings from somewhere in the back of the room as some minstrel ready to earn his dinner. But still her mind lingered on dark thoughts, and though her stomach growled at the smell of the stew, it tasted bland as paper upon her tongue. Chet tried valiantly not to show his concern, but Lauren could feel it emanating from him like the glow of a torch. "Hey, morning, Nicole." "None of you will be surprised, I am sure, to learn that I have spent another day proving my worth," said Jem brightly as he ate. The first spoonful of stew did nothing to slow his words, and the food mashed noisily between his teeth as he talked around it. "Today I cleaned the hoofs of all the horses in the stable and laid fresh hay for each steed. Then I found that the dishes had stacked into a mighty mountain, and so I cleaned them all, every one, without even having to be asked. I hardly know how this place managed before I arrived." "Oh, they must have pined for a dishwasher like yourself, Master Urchin," said Albern with a smirk. "Poor Mag must have spent her nights crying herself to sleep for want of such a noble, scrubbing hands as yours." "Just so," said Jem, missing the humor in the bowyer's tone. Anna sniffed primly and dipped just the end of her loaf into the stew, nibbling on it with perfect manners. "Well, while you have been getting yourself filthy down here, I have been striving for cleanliness. I cannot guess when the rooms upstairs were cleaned last, and some of them stank of something which I am sure I would not like to know about. But they are clean now, and I have only knees and hands worn to the bone to show for it. Give me a few more days here, and I am sure I shall make the place fit for the custom of the High King herself, though why she should find herself in such a town as this, I am sure I do not know." Jem blinked and looked uneasily at Lauren. "But surely we will not be here that long," he said slowly. "I thought we would be leaving any day now." Lauren could see or rather feel Zane's irritation from the other side of the table. She held her peace, excusing her silence with a mouthful of food, which she chewed slowly so as not to be obligated to answer. Albern caught her unease and likely Zane's dark look as well, for he shrugged and said lightly, "You shall all set forth when you are ready. There is no great rush. Certainly Mag enjoys your company. But you cannot enjoy the food we eat, nor the wine we drink, nor the rooms we sleep in, without so much as a copper penny taken in exchange," said Chet. Despite his words, he took a deep pull on his mug of ale before continuing. "I do not understand why she will not take her coin." "It gives her pleasure to give you comfort," said Albern. "Do not ask about it again, or she might bring her spear from its retirement, and then you would be doomed." "I can handle myself," Chet muttered. "Not against Mag, I promise you," said Albern. "Years might have passed since she wielded a blade, yet I would wager all my coin upon her if she were to fight anyone in all the 9 lands. You would too, if you were wise. When we were young she was called the Uncut Lady, and renowned as the greatest fighter in our company, and when she hung up her shield, every mercenary captain across the land poured a cup of wine into the dirt," Chet finished. "You have said that before." "And do you doubt the truth of it?" said Mag. She had emerged from the common room's crowd to stand over the table. At the sound of her voice, Jem and Annis both turned to her with delighted smiles, but she fixed them with a stern look and gestured at the table. "Where is my plate? Where are my mug and my chair? Surely the two of you know better courtesy than this." The children's faces fell. Jem scuttled off towards the kitchen, while Annis ran to fetch an empty chair. They were few and far between in the crowded room. Finally she found a drunkard slumped unconscious on a table and tipped him unceremoniously from his seat. "Our apologies, Mag," said Annis as she pushed the chair up to the table. "We thought you were busy in the kitchen and did not guess you would sup with us tonight." "Sten finally wrestled his useless hide out from the stables and came to relieve me," said Mag. "Tonight my company is yours if you will have it." "We will, and gladly," said Jem, who had returned with a bowl and a mug for her. These he set down with great reverence, as though he were serving a king. "And mayhap you can settle a matter over which I have spent much thought. None of us doubt Albern's words when he calls you the greatest fighter he has ever known. But how can that be when you look no mightier than most of the people in this room? Why, your arms are not even so thick as his." "If you think me a weakling, perhaps you will wrestle me and see how long it takes me to pitch you into the dirt," said Mag, arching an eyebrow. Jem stammered and stuttered and finally fell silent, looking down into his lap. Albern laughed out loud. "Come, Mag, leave the boy alone. He has never seen you dance. You can't blame him for wondering when he has only seen the sort of fighting you get from common street thugs and city guards." He leaned over to speak conspiratorially to Jem, as though he were confiding a great secret. "Not in the strength of the arm, little master, but more often in skill will you find the greater warrior. What use a warrior's brawny bulk What use a soldier's brawny bulk when their blade cannot come within a foot of our mag? The most dangerous fighters are the ones who dance with their foe like a lover, and who can stay on their feet and swinging long after the other man is ready to vomit his guts into the dirt. Surely you have seen the truth of that, said Lauren with a half-hearted smile. If all things in life depended on strength alone, you and I would have died in a ditch long ago. Albin shook a finger at her and nodded. Just so. Why, once Mag and I and the company were fighting in the kingdom of Calenton, putting down the insurrection of some upstart. How to stream writing on Twitch? I don't, actually. I can make that video. All right. Albin shook a finger at her and nodded. Just so. Why, once Mag and I and the company were fighting in the kingdom of Calenton, putting down the insurrection of some upstart who thought he could seize the throne because he had a flock of pretty knights at his back. One of these dullards came riding down on Mag with lance lowered, but the crash of a fist on the table threw them all into silence. Zane had slammed his hand down and held it there now, his gaze roving across their faces. Lauren's heart went to her throat as she remembered his madness in the mountains, when he had cast thunder and flame upon them with abandon, stricken with the Maidstone hunger just as he was now. Without thinking of it, she moved her hand to the hilt of the dagger beneath her cloak. From the corner of her eye, she saw Albin's hand steal beneath the table, likely to his own weapon. Around them, the common room had grown quiet. If I must listen to one more of your tales, I will fling myself into the Melinar and drown, Zane growled. He shot to his feet, and, seeing Albin tense, growled Zane. He shot to his feet, and, seeing Albin tense, held up a hand. Stay yourself, Bowyer. I need only the girl. Lauren, you have avoided this for too long. Come with me now, or do not expect to see me darken this inn's doorway again. If you are determined to sit here and pity yourself until the Nine Lands fall, then I will carry on with our task alone. With that, he stalked between the tables and out of the inn. A few of the men he passed by gave Mag a doubtful look, but she shook her head gently, and they let him pass. Patrons. Something gnaws at that man, she muttered when Zane had gone. You speak more truly than you know, said Lauren quietly. Chet leaned over to murmur in her ear, You need not go if you do not wish it. Inside, Lauren was fuming. Zane spoke to her as though she were some child whimpering in the corner because she wanted second helpings at supper. He had been there in the mountains when Jordell had fallen. Then he had wept as openly as the rest of them. If his mood had darkened since, and if his cravings for Maidstone scratched at the edges of his mind, he had no one to blame but himself. How dare he mock Lauren's pain, speaking as if she had forgotten her duty? But she only shrugged. He speaks at least some truth. I should have had words with him days ago. If it will stay this foul temper that has seized him, I will have them now. I can go with you, said Albin. No, said Lauren quickly. Stay. Tell the children your story. Surely they will enjoy it. And she rose to follow the wizard into the city. Oh, chapter 3 done. Gotta go refilm McAfee. Maha. Maha. And I'm also going to use the restroom. I'll be right back. Greetings, travelers. Hey, Bodegazilla. Oh. I don't have issues with OBS at all. I used to have issues when I was streaming. Thank you, Nightbot. I used to try streaming over Wi-Fi. That doesn't work super well, but of course, that kind of goes without saying. And like, provided you aren't an idiot who tries to stream via Wi-Fi. Wife, you want to say hi to stream? Can you not?
I'm being funny, Garrett.
You're shaking your boobs on camera. Twitch will totally ban an account for doing that.
Okay, how about this? Does that work?
Sure.
Hi, Nicole, Haley, Bodegazilla.
That's everybody.
Ooh, much better. So, sweetie.
Yeah. Do you need me to mute it?
We're gonna mute for just 1 second.
Just a moment, peeps. Hey. Bodegazilla. Zane stood across the narrow street. A lamp on the building beside him bathed him in its sickly yellow glow. His nails scratched furiously at his sleeve, and his head darted back and forth in the darkness. When he saw her emerge, she thought she saw him sigh with relief, but she approached him slowly. If he was going to be so difficult, she was in no hurry to give him what he desired. I may have spoken harshly, he muttered once Lauren was in earshot. Forgive me. Mayhap, said Lauren easily. Still, you have me here now, wizard. What shall we speak of? You make it sound most urgent, though you yourself have had days to speak to me. A conversation takes not one, but two at least. What we have to say, what I have to tell you at least, I would not utter in anything above a whisper, and not at all here in the city, said Zane. Suddenly his voice was no longer bitter or even exasperated. Instead he sounded afraid, and his words carried a darkness that made Lauren shiver. She tried to disguise it as a sudden chill in the night air and drew her cloak closer about herself. What then? Do you mean to fly us into the air with your magic? For we are within the city still. At my best I could not do so, and I am far from my best. If it pleases you, Nightblade, let us take a stroll beyond the walls of Northwood. Cookies. Lauren did not relish the idea of walking unknowing into the darkness with him, but his calling her Nightblade mollified her somewhat. It was a foolish daydream of her childhood, and only a few knew of it, though Jem kept trying to spread the tale of her, an effort she found more irritating than endearing, but she rarely had the heart to tell him to stop. Zane pushed off from the wall and strode down the street, and Lauren felt she had little choice but to follow. Rather than north, as she often went with Chet, Zane now took her east. There the gate lay open still, despite the late hour. Northwood had been removed from the wars of the Nine Lands for so long that it felt no need to lock its doors against them. The guard at the gate gave them a close look, peering at them in the weak light of his torch, but let them pass without question or comment. Ugh. Soon they were in the empty darkness of the farmlands beyond the city, with only the tiny glow of candlelight through the windows of farmhouses to break the inky black. From behind him, Lorne saw the faint glow of Zane's eyes and heard him muttering words of power. A small spark of flame sprang to life in his hand, but almost immediately it guttered and died. Zane muttered a curse and tried again. This time the fire remained, hovering above his palm, though it was thin and wispy compared to the flame she had seen him cast in times gone. Your gift has not entirely left you, I see, she said. It weakens by the day, said Zane. Soon even this small mage light will require all of my power and concentration. Then it will be a long time before my powers return to me. How long? I do not know. I have never witnessed the recovery of one plagued by magestone sickness. They are, as you may know, strictly outlawed by the High King. He barked a harsh laugh, and Lauren found herself joining him. But she also thought with some trepidation of the small packet of magestones she carried in her pocket even now. Zane knew nothing of them. She had made very certain of that. She did not like to imagine what he would do if he ever found out. Soon even the lights of the farmhouses had vanished behind them, and Zane's was the only flame in sight, but the moons had risen already, and they gave Lauren enough light to keep from stumbling most of the time. Finally Zane stopped and turned to her. Without a word, he sat cross-legged upon the ground beside the road. With a furtive toss of his hand, he indicated for her to do the same. A moment, said Lauren. She stepped off into the darkness, searching around in the grass. Though it was still green, it was dry, and from the hedge that ran beside the road she pulled a few dead branches. These she made into a little pile before Zane and waved her hand at it. Light this. It will save your strength, for if we must finally speak of dark matters, it would have all your concentration. My concentration? I find it difficult to think of anything else, said Zane. But he lit the tinder, and soon the branches caught above it. In no time they had a little fire going, and Zane let the flame die in his hands. First, I should tell you what Jordell said just before he died, said Lauren, though I know little of its meaning. He said the Shade's Dark Master had returned, and that Triskin was some captain of special significance. He said, as you and I saw, that magic is no proof against them. The Shades were a secret order that Lauren had only learned of a few weeks ago, when she and her friends had become lost in the Great Rocks and stumbled upon their stronghold there. Jordell had said precious little about them, only that they were an order somewhat like the Mystics, except the Mystics who wore red cloaks preserved order and upheld the King's law in the Nine Lands. Lauren had never learned the Shades' true purpose, though she had an uncomfortable feeling that would soon change. Yay, flaming hot Cheetos. All of this I had guessed already, said Zane, waving a hand in dismissal. Any fool could have pieced it together. Then it was no great crime for me to wait so long to speak to you, said Lauren, her irritation growing. Tell me then what you know, and why it is of such great importance that we must meet out here where only the grubs in the dirt can hear us. Who is this Dark Master of the Shades? Zane looked at her a long moment. His eyes looked black in the darkness, black as they were when he cast his spells under the power of magestones. It made Lauren shiver, though she refused to look away. Then Zane averted his gaze and picked at his sleeve again, and when he spoke it was not with an answer. What do you know of magic? Lauren blinked. Only a little. I heard tales as a child, and Jordell taught me some little more when we were searching for you. I know of its 4 arms, which you call, I cannot remember their scholarly names just now, but they are fire magic, mind magic, were magic, and alchemy. Elementalism, mentalism, therianthropy, and transmutation, said Zane stiffly. Lauren ground her teeth, but he went on quickly as though sensing her impatience. Yes, every child in the Nine Lands knows this. Wizards are few and far between, but rare is the man, woman, or child who goes a lifetime without seeing at least one. Yet we are all of us ignorant, for there are 2 other branches, hidden, never taught to children, for in them lies the fate of us all, and a dark and terrible fate it is. Lauren felt as if the world around them had gone still. She had to struggle to hear even the crickets, for it seemed that everything had gone completely silent. What? Her voice cracked, and she stopped. She swallowed hard and tried again. What are the hidden branches? Ceromancy and necromancy, said Zane. Life and death. I just realized pretty soon I'm going to be sending this book to Podium, and they need a pronunciation guide. And as I'm going through is a perfect time to take note of these things. Okay. Ceromancy and necromancy, said Zane. Life and death. Lauren frowned. Those are not magic. They simply are. So I too thought, said Zane. Yet in Wellmont I spoke with Wellmont. Yet in Wellmont I spoke with Jordell for nearly a day, and he taught me the truth of things. Life magic and death magic are the source of all the other branches. They are the essence of power itself. My power, the power of all wizards, the power of magestones, and all are interlinked, forever entwined with the two hidden branches. But there are no life wizards and death wizards, said Lauren. Said Lauren, irritated. Surely we would know of them if there were. You were the first wizard I had met, Zane, but I had heard tales aplenty before then. 4 branches I was told of, not 6, and nothing of 2 hidden branches. That was by careful design, said Zane, and you are wrong. There are life wizards and death wizards, or rather there is one of each. The necromancer, master of death, and the ceromancer, though that one is more often called the life mage. Only one, said Lauren, more confused than ever. Why, when there are a great many of the other kinds of wizards? Because they are the source, said Zane. They were the first, and from them sprang all the other lesser powers. And though the first necromancer and the first life mage died long, long ago, they were reborn. Again and again they returned, in later times and places, in new bodies, but always together and always with the same powers. Life and death, returning to wage their great and endless war for the fate of all men. I have heard tales of great warriors, wizards, and kings, said Lauren, and thieves as well, yet never have I heard of either a life mage or a necromancer. Many centuries has it been since they last lived in the 9 lands, said Zane softly. And in such times, the in-between times, the mystics hide all knowledge of them. Every record is expunged, every tale snuffed out. They wish for no one to know of the necromancer, for then followers might take root and gather in strength in preparation of his coming. Lauren felt she understood at last. The shades, they serve the necromancer. Do the mystics then serve the life mage? That is their true purpose, but they have forgotten. All but the highest and greatest among them, who guard the secret as carefully as the existence of the necromancer. To know of one is to know of the other. They fell to silence, and for a while the only sound was a light wind rustling the grass about them. Zane shivered and pulled his dirty gray cloak tighter. The weather struck him harder as thin as he was. As she began to digest his words, a thought came to Lauren that made her heart skip a beat. Then if the shades are gathering in strength, does that mean the necromancer is reborn? That is what Jordell guessed, said Zane. He picked at the cuff of his sleeve. And while they grow in power, the mystics do nothing to stop them, said Lauren, stomach sinking, because they know nothing. Only Jordell discovered the truth, and he died in the Great Rocks, and now I have made us sit here and wait in a faraway city when we should have been warning all the kingdoms. Zane looked away. You can hardly be blamed, he said, though his voice was gruff. We all keenly felt his loss. I should not have let that stop me. Jordell would not have. She brushed the fingers of one hand across the battered knuckles of the other. Almost she struck the ground again, but she did not wish to open the wound. I am sorry, Zane. I should have listened to you from the start. Zane grunted and moved to rise. I will not argue there. Only see that you remember this in the days to come. Lauren got to her feet easily and lowered a hand to pull him up. I will. Clearly you were too weak to do much of anything useful and have chosen to be wise instead to make up for it. He glared sharply up at her, but then the moonlight showed him her smile. A wry twist came to his lips, and he took her hand to rise. Together they strode back for Northwood, and Zane flicked a finger to douse the embers of the fire behind them. Chapter 5. The next morning the travelers readied themselves to depart, though they had all seemed happy enough to remain in Northwood. Once spurred to action, Lauren thought they seemed relieved to be on the move again. All of them except Chet had spent many weeks riding from one place to another. A rest had been welcome, yet now their feet itched for the road. While Albert went into town to fetch supplies, Lauren went to the inn stable to prepare their horses for travel. Chet, for lack of anything better to do, kind of. It's a four chapters in an hour isn't all that fast. Chet, for lack of anything better to do, came with her. Midnight gave a great cry the moment Lauren approached, and she smiled to hear it. The horse was wise beyond the custom of beasts, and Lauren thought she must know they were preparing to leave. Still your braying, you nag, said Lauren, but she patted Midnight's nose with affection. I've kept you waiting only a few days. Look at the way she nuzzles you, said Chet, looking Midnight over with appreciation. Lauren had told him the tale already of how she had come to steal the horse. She has taken you for her own, and no mistake. I took her, you mean, said Lauren. She fetched a brush from the wall and took it to Midnight's coat, though she could see almost at once that the mare needed no grooming. Though I suspect she thinks differently. I am her master, and not the... Though I suspect she thinks differently, I am her master, and not the other way around. She grew quiet for a moment and looked at Chet from the corner of her eyes. She had been meaning to ask him a question for some time. Now it had grown in urgency, but with the moment finally here, she found the words hard to say. Chet, she said slowly, carefully, what will you do, once we leave, I mean? His eyes flew wide. He pushed himself from the wall where he had been leaning and rested a hand on Midnight's flank. Why, I mean to come with you, of course, unless my company is not welcome, though I had hoped it would be. Lauren felt a rush of happiness, though she tried to still it. Chet had heard much of their journeys, but not all. Though he no doubt thought he understood his decision, he could not possibly imagine its implications. Of course you are welcome, always, she said, and nothing would make me happier than for you to join us, but I would not have you come out of obligation. It was not obligation that made me leave the Birchwood, said Chet quickly. I wanted to follow you. How often did we wish to leave the forest behind when we were younger? How many lands did we see in our dreams, day after day, longing only to walk their roads with our own feet? Yet in all my daydreams I never foresaw the peril that has plagued me since I left, said Lauren, and though I would like nothing more than your company, I am loath to bring that peril upon you and you unaware of it. Dark things hound our steps, Chet, darker even than I have known. He paused, his hand scratching Midnight's side idly. Things the wizard told you of? Is that why you make ready to go with such haste? Are you sure you can even trust his words? Mayhap your fear is misplaced. It is not, said Lauren. If what lies ahead is half so terrible as what I have left behind me, it will be a road far more perilous than any you have traveled to get here. I will walk that road with you, but only if both your eyes are open. They are, he said, shrugging. I can handle myself in a fight and have learned to ride a horse. What else would I do except take the road beside you, traveling as we always meant to? This is not some fanciful journey. You must not come with me if you think so. Chet smiled. You have told me of the danger, Lauren. That is enough. I still mean to come unless you wish to lock me in these stables or tie me to the trunk of some tree. She gave a lingering sigh. Very well. We will take you into our company and happily on my part. But know that if you ever wish to turn aside and go your own way, no one will think less of you, and we shall have to find you a horse unless you wish to be tied across the back of Midnight's saddle. After readying Midnight and the other steeds to ride, they went back to the inn to see about a horse for Chet. There they found Mag already busy in the common room, her well-muscled arms glistening with sweat as she bussed trays back and forth from tables to kitchen. But she stopped at once when she saw they sought her attention and came to speak with them at the bar. We need a horse for Chet, said Lauren. Do you know where we might find one from an honest seller who will not give us some beast with a cracked hoof? Why, beneath this very roof, said Mag. Sten! Her roar was sudden and sharp, as could often be her custom. It always made Lauren jump a little, as could often be her way, because... It always made Lauren jump a little. Her husband came hastily out from the kitchen, wiping flour from his great arms with a greased rag, his bushy eyebrows drawn together and his wide mouth muttering darkly. Sky above, Mag, how many times have I told you not to bray after me like some donkey? And how many times have I told you how I love my little ass? Said Mag, though she stood a full hand shorter than he did. See to the common room, will you? These two need a horse. The chestnut from that southern man, said Sten. The same. And one last thing. She seized the front of his collar and pulled him down for a quick kiss. But when she tried to pull away, Sten wrapped his arms around her and lifted her from her feet, burrowing his thick beard into her neck. Lauren and Chet looked away, shifting their feet. Mag squealed like a little girl, but gave him a sharp chop in the ribs at the same time. Sten groaned and dropped her like a heavy sack. The customers, she snapped, though she could not hide her smile. I will be only a moment. Mag led them back to the stables. It held more than a dozen stalls, and most were full, 4 of them with the beasts Lauren and her friends had brought. Near the back was a huge chestnut with a flowing golden mane. Lauren had seen it as she came in and out. 2 southern men came through here some weeks ago, from Idris or some such, said Mag. They... Ooh. They each rode a horse when they arrived, but had to sell one to pay for the rest of their way north. It is a good enough beast, no war horse, but no sway-backed farm animal either. Why did you buy it, said Chet. Do you often go riding? Any innkeeper buys a horse for sale, said Mag. A good bit of business, horse flesh. Often the folk who come through my doors need a steed to carry on their journey. And we will pay you handsomely for it, said Lauren firmly. Mag pursed her lips. Not handsomely, though I cannot give him away for free. You know I will take no coin for your room and board, but a horse is another matter. 10 gold weights I paid. That is what I will take from you, and not one more. Just passing him on, so to speak. And if we were any other travelers, how much would we pay then? Said Lauren, folding her arms. That I shall keep to myself, if it is all the same to you. It is not, said Lauren, but so be it. 10 gold weights, as you say. After grasping wrists to seal the pact, Mag returned to Sten in the common room while Lauren went to their room upstairs. She took from her coin purse 10 gold weights and dropped them in a spare purse. After a moment's thought, she added 5 more. She did not know if it was a fair price. If anything, it seemed somewhat high, but the extra could pay for their food and rooms, for Mag had been far too generous. It left her purse somewhat lighter than she liked, but she would have to worry about that later. As long as they had enough to reach Jordel's brethren in Feldamar, that was all that mattered. With Chet still by her side, she went back to the common room where Mag stood speaking with a customer. She threw the spare coin purse to Mag, who scarcely looked up as she caught it with a deft hand and carried on speaking. She did not open it to look inside. Satisfied, Lauren went to her usual table in the corner where Albert, Zane, and the children were already tucking in for lunch. I have fetched as many provisions as I thought the horses could carry, said Albert as they sat down. It should see you at least halfway through Dorsey, though you shall need to stop for more supplies at some point. We will stop as rarely as we can afford, said Zane. The fewer people who mark our passing, the better. Once you are deep into Dorsey, I think the danger shall lessen, said Albert. In the south, their kingdom is preoccupied with the war, and in the north they remain as untroubled as ever at the goings-on of the 9 lands. Who is that man there? Asked Jem. Something about the boy's tone raised the hairs on the back of Lauren's neck. She looked over her shoulder to see Mag talking to someone new, a thin man with a hooked nose and spindly fingers, whose head darted about constantly as he spoke. He was altogether different from the simple folk she had grown accustomed to in Northwood, and it set her nerves on edge. They all watched him for a moment until Mag looked up from the conversation and caught Albern's eyes. She tossed her head at him, and wordlessly Albern rose to approach her. Lauren quickly found her feet and went with him, but when Chet, too, started to rise, she waved him back into his seat. Mag wore a dark look as they reached her. Len, tell them. The thin man pinched his nose and sniffed. There's a man. He was wandering about the city searching for a girl in a black cloak. Len! 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 Len and Sten. The husband and the friend. Lauren felt the blood drain from her face. Albert's mouth set in a grim line. The thin man nodded, pinching his nose and sniffing again. Aye, that's what I thought when I heard, he said, though Lauren had said nothing. Black cloak and remarkable green eyes, he asked for. Use that word, remarkable. Calls himself Rogan. Rogan! Rogan! Sounds like a Street Fighter move. Rogan! Hadouken! Calls himself Rogan, which sounds foreign to me. He's dark of skin like the girl with you, though from their looks I would not call them kin. Big. He carried no weapons, but he felt like one, if you follow me. When I heard him asking around, I thought to myself that I seen eyes just like that, and a black cloak as well, here in your place, Mag. Our thanks, Len. Drink up and tell Stan it is my gift. He sidled off, and Mag fixed him with a hard look. Is this Rogan some friend of yours? I do not know that name, said Lauren. We should have left long ago. Stay your concern, at least for the moment, said Albert. We know nothing for certain. Mayhap there is cause for fear, but mayhap this Rogan is some friend to Jordel. He said nothing of a red cloak. Hist! Albin glanced over his shoulder. Speak not so openly of our fallen friend's order where others may hear. And if this Rogan is one of them and he sought us in secret, do you think he would show himself so openly? We should go and see after him and perhaps find our answer, said Lorne. I think the same. I shall come, said Mag. Len is the good sort, but his nerves can get the better of him. I may recognize the man's face where Len could not. I think Len is a good sort. Len is a good sort, but his nerves can get the better of him. I may recognize the man's face where Len could not. Lauren ran quickly to put her black cloak away upstairs and fetch her dirty brown spare. When she returned, Chet again rose to go with her. Stay, she said. Albert and I have something to look into. It will not take long, and too many at once may draw attention. Is it some trouble? Said Zane sharply. It may be, or it may be nothing, said Lauren. Rest assured we will return in safety. Wait, but perhaps ready the horses just in case. She returned to the bar where Albert still waited for her. Sten, too, was there, and through his beard, Lauren could see his frown of concern. Not long at all, Mag was saying. Do not trouble your ugly little head over it. When have you ever given me cause for concern? I fear only for anyone who may think to tussle with you, said Sten, but the creases in his forehead deepened. Mag placed a hand on his arm and stood on tiptoe to kiss his cheek. See to the customers. Get those layabout children to help if you need them. He let her leave him then, with no more than a long squeeze of her hand to see her off. Chapter 5 done. Chapter 6. They set out into the streets, and though it was warm, Lauren quickly raised her hood to mask her face, and shadow would hide her eyes, or at least so she hoped. Mag took them into the heart of the city. Northwood was no burg so great as Wellmont, or even Cabras, the first city Lauren had seen after leaving her forest home. Here there were hardly any buildings more than a single story. The city was wide rather than tall, sprawled across the land with its streets twisting haphazardly in upon each other, yet with unerring certainty Mag wove her way through them until it was all Lauren could do to keep up. Len said he was last around here, said Mag, looking around at too many arounds. Len said he was near here, said Mag, looking around in the lazy afternoon sun. Stay close to the walls and find shadows to stand in if you can. Lauren needed no second urging, already doing all she could to avoid being seen. Yet it seemed she need not have worried, for though the streets were well peopled, not a single eye turned to her. Search as she might, she could see no sign of the man Len had described. They searched every street and alley they could find, but had no luck for a long while, until Lauren began to wonder if there was anything to worry about after all. There, hissed Albert at last. He seized Lauren's arm and drew her against the wall of the smithy. Lauren ducked her head, then peeked out from it. Lauren peeked out from under the very edge of her hood. She saw him at last. Len had spoken truly. This man Rogan felt dangerous, and though he wore no armor, his size protected him like a suit of plate. His arms were covered, yet under the sleeves she could still see his strength. Dark was his face, and he had scars across both eyes, though he had lost neither of them. Something about him seemed familiar. Lauren could not place the reason, and the more she searched for it, the more she grew afraid. She knew she had seen something like him before, not in Jordell nor any of the other mystics she had met upon the road. Alvin put words to her thoughts. Do you see it? He moves like Triskin. Lauren thought her heart might stop. We must leave. We should have fled the city last night. Why did I delay? We must leave. Albern, what is it? Said Mag. Nothing, or at least no great matter if we leave at once, said Albern. His grip on Lauren's arm tightened, and he very nearly hauled her down the street. Mag quickened her pace to match them. Lauren glanced back over her shoulder once as they fled, and in a frozen, terrible moment, her eyes locked with Rogan's. Then he was gone, buried in the crowd that filled the streets. He saw me, she said, trying not to wail. We were too far away, said Albert. He could not have remarked upon you, not dressed like this. You are not the girl. You're not the only girl in the 9 lands with green eyes. Yet he redoubled his pace. Now they were half running. Is it them, said Mag, the ones you fought in the mountains? Mayhap. We have no time, said Lauren. I only hope the others have readied the horses. Albert looked quickly back over his shoulder. Mayhap I should come with you. Lauren wanted to refuse. Albert had sought to part ways with him and return to his home in Strapa, far to the south, but now she welcomed the thought of his company, for Albert was as skilled at using a bow as he was at making one. Indecision kept her silent, and she could not sort through her thoughts for the fear that filled her heart. She saw Jordel's broken body on the valley floor. She saw Triskin's bloodied grin. The brute Triskin had commanded the fortress they found in the Great Rocks, the one filled with shades that had inspired such fear in Jordel. Jordel, who had always been a solid rock for Lauren to lean on. Triskin had fought them in the mountains' caves, and there they had cut him down with arrows and with swords. And Triskin had risen again, mortal wounds stitching together before their terrified eyes, and they could do nothing but run. They had slain him at last, but in the slaying they lost Jordel, the greatest among them. Mag's inn loomed above. Lauren ignored the back door and burst in through the front, running at once to the table where the others sat. Jem and Annis looked at her in surprise, but in Zane's eyes she saw a dark recognition. He knew something was amiss. We are leaving, Lauren said. Now, where is Chet? With the horses, said Annis. What did you see in that? Now, Annis snapped Lauren. Go with Jem and fetch our things as quickly as your feet can carry you. Meet us at the stables. Annis and Jem caught Lauren's panic like a fever and ran away upstairs. Zane tried quickly to rise, but stumbled and had to catch himself on the table. On thin and shaking legs, he ran after Lauren, and she made for the inn's back door. A man in town searches for us, said Lauren, before he could ask. He is one of them, certainly. He holds himself as Triskin did. Already pale, Zane's skin turned elf white. We are too long delayed. We can be miles away before they learn we were ever here, said Lauren. That is true enough, said Albert, and unless they are mightier woodsmen, then I guess I shall see to it that they have trouble following us once we are beneath the eaves of the birchwood. You will find Chet and me no slouches in that regard, said Lauren. We are children of that forest. They struck the doors of the stable so hard that the hinges nearly broke. Chet's gaze shot up from where he was inspecting his chestnut's bridle. Lauren, what is it? We are leaving, said Lauren. I hope you are ready to sit that saddle. I am, said Chet, eyeing Albert and Zane, but I do not understand what... The sharp blast of a horn cut the air outside. Chet went quiet. Screams tore at the silence that followed, and somewhere far away a bell began to toll. Dun, dun, dun! Chapter 6. Done. Quick bathroom break. Be right back. Spaloosh! Hey, we're back. Chapter 7. Lauren was on the verge of running back to the inn when Jem and Annis appeared at last, bags tucked into their arms and eyes wide with fright. Jet and Alburn took the supplies and began throwing them upon the backs of the mounts while Zane slowly gained his horse's saddle. "What are these horns?" said Jem, his voice quaking. "I heard shouting. An attack," said Lauren. "I knew he saw me." The stable door flew open again. The party whirled to the sound as one. Lauren drew her dagger without thinking and Alburn his sword. When she saw Mag and Sten, Lauren relaxed for a moment until she saw the blades they held in their hands and the shields upon their arms. "The city is under siege," said Mag. "We shall see you safely beyond the walls." "You should go back inside," said Lauren. "Wait until we have gone. They will pursue us beyond the city and leave Northwood in peace." "That I doubt," said Mag. "There is already killing in the streets, and you have no time to convince me otherwise. Mount your horses quickly." Lauren began to reply, but Alburn seized her and nearly threw her into the saddle. "You were nearly a match for Megan's stubbornness, girl, but not quite. Heed her." Lauren ground her teeth, but she stuck her boots through the stirrups. The others were quick to follow. With Mag and Sten on either side, she led the way through the streets, away north where the gate to the birchwood waited. From the west rang the screams of the dying, and Lauren heard the clash of steel. "They would kill all these people just to find us?" cried Annis. "How can they hope to keep themselves a secret after this? If none live to tell the tale, it will remain hidden," said Alburn with grim finality. "Even if some spare few escape to spread word of the attack, most will assume it is an army of Dorsey." "You mean to say it is not?" said Sten. Mag had heard the tale of their journey, but her husband had not, and knew nothing of the Shades. "Time for that explanation later," said Mag. "We should hasten. If I were them, I would move to cut off escape to the north and east. With luck, we should gain the gate before them." But just as she said the words, they came into an open square to find their foes before them. Shades in blue and gray stormed into view, mail shining and blades flashing with the sun. Folk fled before them, but the Shades cut most down as they ran. They were so intent in their slaughter that they paid no mind to Lauren and the others. "This way," cried Mag. She led them aside and down another street away from the killing. Lauren caught sight of Chet's face as they rode on. It was white as a sheet, his teeth bared in a grimace of horror. She gripped his arm as they rode and squeezed until he met her gaze. "Try not to look," she said. "Keep your eyes front and your mind on where you are going." He gave her a shaky nod. Beyond him, Lauren saw Chet, Jem, and Annis. Their mouths were grim lines, and their shoulders were set. The rest of them had seen so much death that even this wanton slaughter did not make them despair. She was unsure whether that was a good thing or not. Mag took them through many twisting alleys, but the next time they came into the open, they happened upon more Shades. Here some citizens of Northwood had taken up arms. Shovels and pitchforks turned to makeshift weapons, but the Shades were disciplined and fought in coordination. One or two had fallen in the fighting, but scores of their victims littered the ground. "No use, it will be a fight," said Mag. Her voice was a chilling monotone, and had turned flat and lifeless, a terrible sound from the woman who had been so warm to them, so motherly to the children. Lauren found herself shivering despite the afternoon's heat. Alburn drew an arrow from the quiver at his hip and turned to the rest of them. "Stay behind Mag and Sten. Stay your blades unless you have no other choice, for they will try to seize them and pull you down. Now, charge." Mag struck. Then, for the first time, Lauren saw death made beautiful. Mag struck, filled with battle lust at the sight of her fellows killed in their own homes. She fought, blade lent the speed of her rage, her shield like a castle wall in motion as it warded their blows. Not once did her blade strike without drawing blood, faster than a serpent strike, elegant and fluid as a flowing waterfall. Beside her, Sten used his size and strength to batter his foes, knocking them back until he could find an opening for his sword, and behind her, Alburn let forth a flurry of arrows, each finding its mark as archery like wizardry to Lauren's eyes. But Mag's blade was coated in death, her fighting cry the wail of a banshee, and no foe came under her gaze and survived. In twos and threes they fought her, but they could not pierce her guard, nor could they stay her blade once it swung towards them. The fight was over almost before Lauren knew it had begun. The Shades who did not fall to their assault turned and fled through the streets, vanishing behind the buildings and into the alleys of the city. Mag turned to them, her face spattered with a mist of red. Lauren saw flecks of it on her bared teeth. "On," growled Mag. "Do not stop moving, not even for a moment." Wordlessly they followed. From the side, Lauren could see Alburn's dark look, and Sten looked sadly. A few people, not any named characters yet. Yeah, no spoilers in chat. From the side, Lauren could see Alburn's dark expression, and Sten looked sadly at his wife as they pressed through the streets, but Mag had no eyes for them, only for the road ahead. Twice more they came upon Shades in the streets, and twice more Mag drove them back with a furious charge. Sten could barely keep up. Indeed, even Alburn's arrows seemed to strike a moment after Mag's lightning blows. Lauren and the others tried only to stay out of the way, quaking in their saddles as they watched Mag slice through the heart of her foes like a scythe. At last they came within sight of the city's north wall, but there they paused. More shades came marching in through the gate in rank and file. It was an army of them, of far greater strength than they had seen even in the Great Rocks. There are so many, breathed Lauren. Surely not even Mag can defeat them all, said Jem. Albern, what do we do? Albern hesitated. Sten had stopped in his tracks, and even Mag paused as though the sight of so many foes had at last broken through her killing rage. The moment silence grew too long, Lauren tugged on Midnight's reins and began to wheel around. Come, mayhap they have not reached the eastern gate yet. We can try to. They will have reached it, said Mag. She spoke in a battle commander's bark, but still it held no fire, no anger, only emptiness. She turned to them, and Lauren saw none of the warmth she had grown used to in the woman's eyes. Come now, little children. Do you fear so few of them? Come with me, and you shall reach the birchwood. I swear it. Mag, but Albern was too late. She ran straight into the heart of the shades. A blade held aloft, glittering except where it was caked in gore. Sten came 2 steps behind, trying and failing to match her furious pace. Albern drew another arrow. His quiver was half empty. He turned to Lauren and Chet with a snarl. Make use of those bows on your backs, or give me your arrows, but do not stand here idle while she risks her life for yours. Then he kicked his mount's flanks, and he too charged the shades. Jem, sitting behind Annis in their saddle, drew his short sword from the belt at his waist. Lauren saw it shaking in his hand, but his eyes were hard. Well then, he said, I'd always thought to perish old in bed, but slain in battle seems a fair enough choice. Can you help them? Said Lauren, turning to Zane. He was shaking in his saddle, his hands looking almost too frail even to hold the reins. She knew his answer before he spoke. My flames are nearly guttered out. I might conjure enough to stop one of them or two, but even that little effort would exhaust me. Lauren said, Annis, eyes wide with fright. What do we... Between my horse and Chet's, said Lauren. She drew forth her bow and knocked an arrow. Jem, do not dare to strike at them except to save yourself and Annis. Stay close to the others, but above all, stay alive. They rode after Albern. Lauren drew the fletching all the way back to her ear and sighted along the shaft. Mag stood against a squadron of foes now, and more were trying to circle around behind her. Lauren aimed for one of them, lowering her aims... lowering her bow to strike him in the leg, blood dripping from his thigh, a trail of it for miles through the woods. She tensed as the picture flashed into her mind, and the arrow went wide to rebound from cobblestones. Cursing, she drew another. Beside her, Chet loosed a shaft of his own. It flew true, skewering a soldier's calf. Beside them, Albern's bow was singing. Jem sat shaking in his saddle, holding his blade forth as if to ward any of the soldiers from coming too close, but they had no eyes for Lauren and the others, only for Mag in their center. Still she fought on, and her strikes had not slowed. The shades could not get inside her reach, nor could they approach her from the side unawares, for Sten was with her. At her back he stood, guarding her rear as she guarded his, and if he could not kill as many as she could, still he could keep her from being outflanked. Any who threatened to break his guard soon found themselves with one of Albern's shafts in their throats. So intent were the shades on bringing the warriors down that they had drifted to one side of the street, leaving the other side open. And beyond them, Lauren saw that at last they had stopped pouring through the entrance. The way to the birchwood was clear, at least for her and Zane and the children, but despite their best efforts, Mag was hemmed in now, and the shades were close to surrounding Albern besides. Albern, cried Lauren. He risked a glance at her, and she pointed at the city's gate. Quickly his gaze followed, and she saw a light in his eyes. But then he turned back to Mag, and the light went dark. Sten slipped. A powerful blow to his shield sent his feet sliding in the blood that slicked the ground. His knee struck the dirt of the street, and the sword flashed around in a wide arc. He jerked his head back, and for a moment Lauren thought he had avoided the blow. Then she saw a red torrent gush from his throat. Mag was behind him and could not see it, only that he knelt. She gripped his arm and tried to pull him up. Rather than rising, he fell onto his back, his lifeblood bubbling forth. Mag screamed. The sound of it was nothing human. Lauren had never heard its like before. She knew at once that she would remember it for the rest of her life. For a moment the whole world held its breath. Chet froze with an arrow drawn. Even Jem stopped quaking. Zane had leaned forwards in his saddle, one hand outstretched as though to send forth flame or thunder. But nothing came, nothing but the scream, piercing and terrible and filled with rage. Before it finished, she was already on her feet again, already killing. She pressed into their mass, hacking at them like a woodsman at a cluster of logs. Even with her back unguarded, they could not bring her down. But now at last their strikes found flesh. Lauren saw deep red rents appear on her arms. The uncut lady, Albern had called her, but no longer, yet she fought on. Albern looked back at Lauren and then to the open city gate that now seemed leagues away. Lauren grit her teeth and spurred Midnight forwards to help. No, cried Albern, and she reined up. Fly while you still can. She wanted to ride into them and damn her vow not to kill. She would draw Mag from their midst in the darkness, protect any of them that tried to stop her. A hand gripped her arm. She turned, expecting Chet, but it was Zane instead, and his eyes were grim. Fly, he said. Remember Jordell. She ripped off her quiver and raised it, then tossed it to Albern. He caught it with a solemn nod. Then he drew his sword and threw himself into the fight, trying to cut his way through to Mag. But Lauren would not watch. Midnight wheeled at her touch, and they spurred to a gallop. In seconds they had passed beyond the city and reached the birchwood, and Northwood vanished behind the trunks of the trees, this time mercifully. Oh, killing characters gives me feels. George R. R. Martin literally does kill everyone. All men must die. That is his motto. Ba-bum, ba-bum. Ba-bum, ba-bum. Ba-bum, ba-bum, bum, bum. Chapter 8. They did not stop their mad ride when they reached the trees, but they had to when the sun went down. Lauren scarcely noticed, and it was Zane who finally called them to a halt. She did not understand for a moment as she looked at him in confusion. It was Chet who spoke first. "The moons will not rise for hours, Lauren." His voice trembled. "We can ride by their light if we must, but pressing on now is folly." Lauren stared a moment longer before she heard the words. Then she nodded and slid from the saddle, letting midnight wander. She set off through the trees, away from the others, eyes wide to catch every mote of starlight and avoid a stumble, but she did not see the forest around her. Rather, she saw only a ghostly and wispy aspect of it, just enough for her feet to avoid upturned roots and stones. Instead of the trees and the silvery starlight, she saw Albern's charge and Mag's skin covered in wounds and Sten's slashed throat. It was some time before she could muster her thoughts. When she did, she realized she had wandered far from where the others had stopped. She turned to retrace her steps, and when she found their camp again, they had started a small fire beneath the trees. Part of her wanted to douse it to keep them hidden in case they were pursued, but she could not muster the strength to care for so small a thing. Chet sat alone outside the fire's light. His knees were pulled up against his chest and his arms lay across him. He seemed to be looking at the firelight, but his gaze was far away as though he saw nothing at all. A sharp pang in her gut reminded her she had not eaten for hours. She went to Midnight's saddlebag to fetch some meat and bread. Something went clink as she opened the saddlebag. Her brow furrowed. When she lifted the flap, she saw a small coin purse. It was her spare, the one she had given to Mag. Slowly she untied the strings and poured the contents into her hand. 10 gold weights sat there gleaming in the firelight. She stared at them for a while. Then she put them back in the purse and put the purse in the saddlebag. Her appetite had vanished, so she closed the bag again and went to sit by the fire, but by the time she reached it, she did not want to rest, so she kept walking past it and over to Chet. She had nearly reached him before he noticed her and looked up. "You should eat," he said. "I suppose I should too." "I tried. Will you walk with me?" He shrugged and stood to stand beside her. Stood to stand. He shrugged and stood to go with her. Together they went back into the darkness, only to her surprise Lauren found it easier to see, and she realized with a start that the moons had risen. She had spent more time alone than she thought. Chet stopped and heaved a shuddering breath. When she looked to him, she saw his shoulders shaking gently. She laid her hand on his back and turned him around. Once he faced her again, she saw his cheeks wet with tears. "They did not even seem to care who they killed," he said. "I saw children fall beneath their blades." "So it often is when armies sack cities," said Lorna. "So I have heard. I was there for the Battle of Wellmont, but the city held. There was no killing in the streets." He looked away and cleared his throat. When he spoke again, she could hear him trying to sound carefree, as though his tears were not there. "You all hardly blinked as you rode through it," he said. "I thought it would die of fright." "We've seen killing before," said Lauren. "Some of us more than others." Yeah, Bodegazilla, select all of your documents and view them. Here, watch. So I'm in Scrivener, and I have all of my documents selected in the binder on the left, the whole book. And then I don't even think you need to like Command A the text. Like you don't need to select everything, but you can. But then you go up to Scrivener's help menu, and under help, there is an option. If you just type the word smart, there's an option. It's under, where is it? Okay, so you go to format, convert quotes to smart quotes. Yeah, you can select manuscript, you can do whatever. You just want to make sure that you do it to your entire book. But format, convert quotes to smart quotes. You all hardly blinked as you rode through it, he said. I thought I would die of fright. We've seen killing before, said Lauren, some of us more than others. I'm sorry about Albert. I knew him only a few days, but he seemed to have a good heart. Mag and Sten as well. They did, said Lauren. He swiped a hand across his eyes, but tried to make it seem like he was only wiping sweat from his brow. Lauren, we must get away from here. We should ride into Dorsey and vanish where no one will find us. If that army came to Northwood looking for you and was willing to sack the city just to find you, they will not stop pursuing you now. Not for me, Bodegazilla, for you. For you and for your readers. Will they not expect that, said Chet? Will they not hunt us all along the road? That does not matter, said Lauren. It is the duty I have taken upon myself. I have been hunted before. Duty, said Chet. His voice had gone high and hysterical. Why should you wish this upon yourself? I thought to travel with you, not die beside you. Oh, I know that all the Nine Lands may be dangerous, but this is another thing altogether. Did you not spend enough time unhappy and trapped by your parents out of some misplaced sense of duty? That was nothing I chose, said Lauren, but this is my life now. It has been almost since the moment I left the Birchwood. Doom follows in my footsteps. That is why I urged you not to come with us. Even now I urge you to turn away, to let your tracks lead you home. He stood there looking at her in fear, and with a sinking heart she realized he was considering it, but at last he looked away and shook his head. No, I said I would come with you. Who could call me anything but faithless if I turned away because the road grew dark? Ah, thank you, Nightbot. Who cares what anyone would call you, said Lauren. I would happily have you by my side, but I would rather see you safe. And I you, he said. That is why we should go, and now, let others tend to duty. You and I have spent all our lives as its victims. I cannot, she said in a small voice. I owe it to him, to Jordell. Chet looked as though he might say more, but then her stomach gave a gurgle. He stopped collecting himself and shook his head. We should eat. The road will grow darker still if we find ourselves starving upon it. I said I am not hungry. Hungry or not, I think you can swallow. Come. Ha ha! Swallow. They made their way back to the firelight. By the time they reached it, Chet seemed to have shaken off the darkness in his mind. Lauren wondered if it had been so easy for her the first time. When she had first seen men killed in anger, it had been with the merchant caravan where she met Annis. Annis's mother, the merchant Damaris, had ordered a company of constables to be killed to preserve the secrecy of the goods she was smuggling. Lauren remembered her horror at the senseless slaughter, and how the merchant had forced her to help dig graves for all the bodies. But looking back on it now, she hardly blinked at the sound of the constables dying. She had seen so much since then, so much worse, so much more frightening. And yet she could not banish from her mind what had happened during the battle. She had chosen her target and then had hesitated. The thought of her father's corpse had flashed into her mind, and the shot had gone wide. Mayhap she had been able to fire the arrow. But such thoughts were ridiculous. There had been scores of shades. Her arrow would not have made a difference. All the arrows in her quiver would not have made a difference. Ah, good times. Yet mayhap she could have done something. For one brief thrilling moment she had meant to charge in and rescue Mag by whatever means she could. She knew, looking back on it, she would not have hesitated to spill blood. That prospect terrified her, and yet it made her wonder again. Why did she still hold so tightly to that ideal when she had already taken a life? That was different, she told herself. Jem and Annis had eaten already and lounged at the fire's edge while staring into its heart. Lauren had not seen Zane touch his food, but then the wizard's appetite did not seem very great these days. He, too, watched the flames, but every few seconds he would look over his shoulder into the darkness beyond their camp. When he saw Lauren and Chet return, his eyes flashed with interest. Good, he said. We must discuss what we plan to do next. I myself am most curious about that, said Jem. We have made our escape in a narrow one, but what now? We must warn the Mystics. The Mystics, said Lauren. We know that, said Annis, but where do we mean to go? South to Cabris, the High King's seat? I do not relish either of those choices, for my family would be thick about us. And you will remember that even Jordell did not trust all those of his order. How will we know the right Redcloaks to speak to, and which ones will ignore our warnings to hang us as criminals instead? If you will remember, Jordell told us where he meant to go, said Zane, his stronghold of Ammon and Feldamar. Ammon and Feldamar. Okay. Cabras. I knew I was forgetting one. God damn it. He told me where it lies, and that is where I think we must lay our course. His master lives there, a man named Cal of the family Endel. And you think this man can be trusted, said Lauren? Have you met him? I trust few, mystics least of all, said Zane, but this at least we owe Jordell, to deliver his message to his master and let the mystics do what they may with the tale. But how shall we get there, said Lauren. I have scarcely any idea how to make our way to Feldamar. I know only that it is north and east of Selvin. A far ways north and east, yes, said Zane. Ammon is somewhere near the border, somewhat near the northern shore of the Great Bay. I visited that kingdom once in my youth. The Oxford comma is a thing. That is a summary of my opinion on the matter. A far ways north and east, yes, said Zane. Ammon is in Feldamar and somewhat near the northern shore of the Great Bay. I visited that kingdom once in my youth. Ships travel to that area once in my youth. Ships travel to that area from all ports on the bay. The King's Road, then, said Jem. We could take it to the Steed or Garsek, Selvin's capital. Garsek. So many names. That would be like walking into the lion's den, cried Annis. We would certainly be spotted, and then I would be taken by my family. The rest of you would not be so lucky. You would likely take along in the killing. No, Garsek and the Seat seem poor choices both, said Zane, but there are other ports in Selvin, ports farther south along the bay from where we might sail, but traveling there would take a long while, and the voyage would be longer besides. No, I think we must sail from Dorsey. Lauren blinked, gawking at him in the firelight. Dorsey, have Maidstones addle your mind so much, wizard? They are at war with Selvin, and no safe place for us to wander, especially since, as you have all pointed out so carefully, I speak like a child of Selvin birth. Chet is from my village, and most likely has the same accent. Yes, said Jem and Annis at once. Accent? Said Chet. That was true enough when we set out from Wellmont, said Zane, but now the war is far away in the southwest corner of the kingdom. Likely those in the northeast of Selvin have hardly heard of the fighting. Citizens of Dorsey will be even less concerned so far away from the conflict. And so close to the border between the two kingdoms we will find many families with both Selvin and Dorsan kin. Your quaint voices will scarcely bear mention. So that is our plan then, said Annis. We will strike north into Dorsey, then travel east until we reach the coast. I dare say I like it better than the thought of riding to the seat where, if I have my way, I will never set foot again in this life. It seems a prudent course, said Jem. Chet's eyes lit up and he turned to Lauren. Mayhap there is another way. Traveling across the open country of Dorsey poses its own dangers, and we do not know the land. But there's another road to the coast of the Great Bay, and it is a road for which we already have 2 guides. Lauren caught his meaning at once. The Birchwood. What of it, said Jem. It runs all the way to the bay, and Chet and I know it well. Mayhap we are not woodsmen so great as... She stopped short just before she said Alban, as some others, but this is our home. I do not think the shades can follow us beneath these trees. If there is one thing we should have learned by now, it is not to underestimate our foes, said Zane darkly. Think of this. The shades attack northward from the west, but also from the north. They have been gathering in strength, much greater strength than we knew. Where did they all come from? They did not conjure so many soldiers from thin air. They are men and women of these lands, of Selvin and Dorsey, and likely other kingdoms besides. And if they know we have fled into the forest, they will send trackers after us who know it as well as the 2 of you. You think any Selvins fight on their side? Said Lauren angrily. You think they would march into one of their own cities and murder their fellows in the streets? I think you know little of our kingdom. And you think too highly of your fellows, snapped Zane. Mayhap they were starving and the shades gave them coin. Mayhap their homes were ravaged by war and the shades offered them safety. Mayhap they were dying from plague and the shades provided refuge. And mayhap their suffering was not at the hands of some whimsical fate, but their fellow citizens of Selvin. Do you think, then, that they would stay their blades? Lauren fumed, though in the back of her mind she knew she had little reason for it. She had met evil men and women before. Few acted as they did for the joy of it. She turned away from Zane, refusing to answer him. Chet frowned, but spoke to appease the wizard rather than to argue. Still, we have a lead. I think we can evade them. And in any case, he would let Lauren and me return home. If the shades do indeed wander these lands, we owe it to our families to warn them. He stopped short, glancing at Lauren from the corner of his eye, and to our other friends, of course. Lauren turned to see Zane's dark eyes fixed on her again. Though she had never told him the full tale, he knew something of why she had left the forest. When he had found her there, a young girl who wished to flee her home, she had shown him the bruises her father used to leave upon her body. That was what had prompted him to bring her in the first place. He had to know she had little reason to return, not like Chet, whose father loved him and who had had many friends in the village besides. But still, Lauren remembered some folk from her childhood with fondness, so it seemed many years since she had seen them last. Perhaps Chet was right. Perhaps they should warn the village and let them escape. But to where? She did not know, but anywhere had to be better than a kingdom overrun by shades. All right, Bodegazilla. She met Zane's gaze defiantly. Yes, we will make for the coast by way of the Birchwood. Rest, all of you. We ride again at first light. Zane glowered at her. I will stand the first watch. She held his gaze a moment longer before she turned to fetch her bedroll from Midnight's saddle. Chapter 8, Dean! Chapter 9. Dawn broke gray and cold, and with the sun struggling to pierce the clouds and find them beneath the trees. Lauren felt a sore spot under her shoulder after days spent in Magazine, which was comfortable if plain. The forest floor was an unpleasant reminder of life on the road. Do you think it will rain? Said Annis, who had already awoken. She was looking up at the clouds. No, said Chet. The air is not right, and this part of autumn rarely gives rains. It gave us plenty in the Great Rock, said Jem. Mountains are different, said Lauren. This is the Birchwood. Zane still sat where Lauren had seen him last night. She realized suddenly that he had not woken any of them to stand watch. The wizard had stayed awake all night. Thank you, Nightbot. Skin on the back of his hands was raw where he had been picking at it, and she saw him shivering as he rocked back and forth. He seemed unaware of the rest of them. The Magestone sickness must be terrible for him now. It had been weeks since last he had eaten the precious black stones, and the darkness took time to leave his body. Last time it had taken more than a month before his mind had righted itself, and his body had still been recovering its strength when she fed him stones again. Now his countenance worried her. They could ill afford such weakness, the weakness of his body or his judgment. For Lorne knew his thoughts must be as frail as his skeletal frame, and she worried what the Magestone sickness might spur him to do, especially if he imagined he was betrayed. For Lorne had shared much with him the night before, but she had not told him everything. Could she now, or would that only bring about the very crisis she hoped to avoid? What would Jordell have done? Her jaw clenched with resolve. No, Jordell had seen too much value in secrecy. He had valued Lorne and trusted her, but not enough. If he had told her more about her dagger early on, she would have had less trouble on the road from Cabris. If he had told her about the Magestone, she would never have given them to Zane. And if he had warned her about the necromancer and the life mage, mayhap she could have found some way to save him from Triskin. No, she would follow in Jordell's footsteps, but not too closely. Zane must trust her with his whole heart, and that could never happen while she hid secrets from him. And what of your Maidstones? That thought stopped her short. Could she tell him that she still had some of the stones? Did her desire for trust extend so far? No, he would go mad with hunger, she knew. She could not tell him, at least not now. That was not dishonesty, but mercy, and in the meantime she would share all that she could. Lorne walked over to the wizard and motioned to him. Come with me a moment. I wish to discuss the road. His eyes snapped up to her, and for a moment she saw the fog of confusion in his eyes as if he did not recognize her. Then they cleared, and he levered himself to his feet with some difficulty. Lorne took his elbow as he stood and then led him off east into the woods. Once they were out of sight of the others, she stopped. The road, eh? Said Zane. The others are no fools. That boy of yours least of all. Lorne gritted her teeth and chose not to correct him. The last night you told me of the necromancer and the life mage, but there was something else I did not tell you, something I was unsure I should speak of. But you deserve to know it, especially now. I am done keeping secrets between us. His eyebrow arched, and she saw interest spark in his eye. His brow arched. Say on, then. It can hardly be darker news than I have heard already. It might be in its own way, she said. It concerns this. She reached to her hip and drew forth her dagger. Zane fixed it with a wary eye. The black designs along its length were spiked and twisted, unmoving now that Lorne had seen them writhe like the tendrils of a living thing. Your dagger, he said, from whence you took the name Nightblade. This blade was my parents'. I found it when I was a young child. Zane arched an eyebrow. And you stole it from them when you left? It and other things besides, she said. Only I did not know what I carried with me, nor do most who see it, except some very few, and to them it is an object of great terror. Zane's brow furrowed, and he reached out for the dagger. Lorne hesitated, but then she handed it to him by the hilt. It is a fine weapon, elegantly made, to be certain, said Zane. I do not recognize the craftsmanship, but I do not see what makes it more fearsome than, say, a sword, especially when you will not even use it to defend yourself. To kill, you mean, said Lorne sharply. The dagger's power lies not in its steel, but in its magic. It is an ancient weapon made centuries ago in the time of the Wizard Kings. His eyes darkened. That is an ancient weapon, Zane. That's what I just said. To kill, you mean, said Lorne sharply. The dagger's power lies not in its steel, but in its magic. It was crafted and imbued with spells centuries ago, in the time of the Wizard Kings. His eyes darkened. That is an ancient weapon to be found in the hut of a woodsman. Ancient, yes, and mightier than can be seen with the eye. Jordell recognized it from the moment he saw it, and eventually he told me its tale. It is a weapon of the mage hunters, a blade for hunting wizards and killing them. Zane sucked in a sharp breath through his teeth, and suddenly he held the dagger gingerly between thumb and forefinger. He handed it back to her, and Lauren took it gratefully. Now the wizard looked at the blade with distrust. "I've heard tales of such weapons," he said. "There were dark whispers of them, and of the mage hunters that passed among the students at the academy. If our instructors heard us whispering these tales, we were sharply reprimanded and beaten. Of course, that only made the tales spread farther. Farther? I guess farther. I had heard that one such blade was found recently, sometime within living memory. The High King Enelin discovered it, or it was revealed to her," said Lauren, "and she grew wrathful and reinforced the Fearless Decree because of it. To carry such a weapon means death, and not only for the wielder, but mayhap for the mystics themselves." "As it should," growled Zane. "They used these weapons to slaughter my kind in droves. No wizard could rest easily at night knowing such blades were carried in the Nine Lands. Who knew but that some mystic might not appear upon your doorstep the next morning, immune to your magic and intent on taking your life? They say it was a time of great fear for us, and the very reason for the dark wars of the Wizard Kings. After I heard of how they hunted us, I could find no fault with my forebears for beginning those wars." He had begun to pace as he talked, and soon his voice rose louder and louder in its wrath. Lauren stood back from him and found her hand gripping the handle of the dagger more tightly, but almost as soon as the anger had come upon him, it fled. He sagged like a sack of grain with the bottom sliced open and placed a hand over his eyes. "No," he muttered, "no, those are wrathful words from days I have left behind. I have eaten of the mage sons and come back twice now. I have seen what plagued the wizard kings, what I've seen what plagued the wizard kings, what madness took hold of their minds and led to the dark times." "The wizard kings ate of magestones?" said Lauren. "I had not heard that. You had not heard of magestones at all until you left the birchwood behind you." "Yes, many of the wizard kings consumed the stones with reckless hunger. Their power was all the greater, but so were their madness and their wrath. Those who abstained were no villains, at least no more so than any other kings, but as the kingdoms vied for power, wizards ate the stones in greater numbers." He looked at her, and she saw in his eyes the same man she had first met under the trees of this very forest, bitter, yes, and quick with biting wit, but mostly sad and frightened and a little lost. "Now I have learned of their madness, and it makes me wish there were more such weapons in the Nine Lands." Lauren gulped. "What then do you think I should do with it?" "Keep it," he said. "I have lived my whole life a wizard, and until recently I gave little thought to what it must be like for the rest of you, those without the gift and the curse of our power. I can only imagine the fear you must feel, living in these 9 kingdoms where magic runs rampant. Unless I miss my guess, you will cross paths with many more wizards in the course of your life. Keep it and use it to your advantage." He pushed past her and made for the camp, leaving Lauren standing on her own. Just before he vanished between the trees, he turned and called back over his shoulder, "I only hope I never make an enemy of you again, Nightblade." Chapter 9 done. Chapter 10. They set off soon afterwards, mounting their horses and heading east through the trees. Despite the cast of the sky, the day soon warmed to a nearly unbearable heat. Lauren cast her... Actually, I have to use the restroom real quick. BRB. Burb. Burb's the word. back to it. By the way, I really, really like the... I have the print proof of Weremage, which I am silently reading at the same time that I'm reading Shadeborn out loud. And it's real nice. It's real good. I'm a fan. I'm enjoying it quite a lot. Very pretty. Chapter 10. They set off soon afterwards, mounting their horses and heading east through the trees. Despite the cast of the sky, the day soon warmed to a nearly unbearable heat. Lauren cast her cloak back over her shoulders. Chet removed his own, stowing in his saddlebags, and the children did the same. Only Zane still felt chilled and clutched his cloak tighter as they went, trembling. Lauren set a good pace for them, but nothing too drastic. Though she thought they were most likely safe, she had not entirely discounted the possibility that they were still being followed. They could need their horses' strength for a sudden burst of speed, but they saw no sign of pursuit, and at midday she felt confident enough to let them stop for a meal. It was a strange feeling, she reflected, sliding down from atop midnight. For so long they had had Jordell to set their pace, and he'd pushed them hard or let them wander according to the urgency of their mission. Now they were without his guidance, and Zane, though older than Lauren, was in no condition to set their course. Lauren realized with a start that the others now looked to her for leadership. It was not an entirely comfortable feeling. "So do you know any songs?" said Jem, lounging in the grass and looking towards Chet. "Jem," said Lauren in a warning tone. "What?" said Jem. Albert knew songs and was happy enough to sing them. He had a fine voice, too. His eyes grew solemn and he looked down at his nails. "I heard him sing," said Chet, "but I do not have his gift for it. There were only a few in our village who knew many songs, let alone had the voices to carry them. They guarded the secret jealously. I think they enjoyed the attention it earned them when we would have a dance." Lauren suddenly laughed out loud, and the others looked at her startled. "I'm sorry," she said, "but do you remember when Miss Aisley grew drunk on wine and forgot the words of the song she was singing?" Chet's crooked teeth flashed in a grin, and she had set her cap for Rickard, but she was so befuddled she seized Bracken instead and gave him a kiss so deep the old man nearly fainted. Lauren doubled over, and by now the children had caught their humor and chuckled along. She even saw Zane smirk. Rickard would not speak to her for months, and Bracken kept hanging about her house day after day and stayed a week longer than normal. Their deep belly laughs rang out through the forest, echoing from the trees. Lauren had almost forgotten what it was to laugh, and certainly at a memory of home. Chet fixed her with a look, and it was as though he could read her thoughts. "You see, not all our past is dark. I am happy we will see our village again. Mayhap now that those who made it so terrible for you no longer dwell there, you will change your mind about it." Lauren thought she heard the words he did not say, "and change your mind about our journey." She frowned. She did not wish to keep arguing about this with him, least of all in front of the others. "I wish I could see Bracken again," she said, as a way of changing the subject. "When last he came, I was still just a little girl. I wonder what he would think of me now, chasing after the tales of Menet he used to spin for me." "Menet," cried Jem. "I heard many stories of him. He was my favorite. The other boys in Cabris always said I looked just like him." Because of course they did. "We heard of him as well upon the seat, but never as a hero," said Anna, sniffing. "He was a scoundrel, a lawbreaker whom the king could never bring to justice." "I heard he slew maidens in their bed and took toys from children." Menet? Never, said Lauren. He took it from evil kings who taxed their subjects too highly, and kinslayers and murderers. Always he made right what others had done wrong. Annis looked at Jem, but the boy only shrugged. She looked at Zane, but he shook his head. I care little for children's tales of a thief who likely never lived in the first place, said the wizard. Everyone has heard of Menet, but the wise know he is nothing but a legend. Lauren glared daggers at him, but Chet spoke first. Still, such tales may have worth, but I never loved them like Lauren did. I loved the stories of kings and warriors, brave knights and cunning constables who brought down those who broke the king's law. Mayhap one day you will hunt me then, said Lauren with a smile, for I am no friend to constables. Why do you think I left the village in the first place, said Chet, feigning an evil smile and forming his hands into claws. She shoved him into the grass as the children laughed anew. It felt as though a dark storm that had followed them from northwood was now blowing away. They went to their bedrolls that night in far better spirits than the day before, and Lauren insisted on standing the first watch to let Zane sleep. She did not know if he ever actually found slumber, and more than once in the night she saw his eyes glittering in the light of the fire, but she woke Chet as the moons were descending, and then fell into a deep sleep. But they were not long on the road that second day before something happened to darken their mood. The land rose sharply up across their path, forming a range of hills that were just shy of being proper mountains, but there was a clear path up, so they found its base, and then Lauren and Chet led them in the ascent. They were halfway up the rise when Lauren chanced to look out at the land they had crossed, and there, some leagues away, she caught a flash of movement that did not look like a bird or a bear. She called him to a halt and stood stock still, searching. "What is it?" Jem said from his saddle. Lauren hushed him with a sharp wave of her hand and kept staring. Chet came to her side and spoke softly. "Did you see someone?" "Mayhap," she mumbled. "Somewhere somewhat south of our course, and there." She saw it again. There were several shapes moving beneath the trees. Even from this distance she recognized riders on horseback. "I see them," said Chet. "There are many. Mayhap a dozen." "A dozen what?" growled Zane. "Riders," said Lauren. "Some leagues behind us, but traveling in the same direction." All were silent for a long moment. Then Annis said half-heartedly, "We do not know they are shades. They could be simple travelers." mayhap a league behind us, but traveling in the same direction. All were silent for a long moment, then Anna said half-heartedly, "We do not know they are shades. They could be simple travelers like us. Surely some people must travel through the birchwood on their journeys, or because they do not like the roads, or simply because it is more pleasant than the lands beyond." "We are hardly simple travelers," said Lauren, "but mayhap you are right. We do not know that we are pursued." "After the luck we have seen upon our road, do any of you truly doubt it?" said Zane darkly. "They are riding east. That means they come from the direction of Northwood." They did not answer him, but carried on up the path, and their steps came a bit quicker. Chapter 10, June! Chapter 11. They soon crested the rise. There at the top they stopped and looked away west again, peering through the tops of the trees, but they could see no sign of the pursuers if indeed they were being pursued. Quickly they rode down the other side of the ridge, and with many a backwards glance towards the top. The birchwood rose about them as they reached the bottom, and soon there was nothing but the sound of hoofbeats. No one talked as they rode, nor sang. When Lauren's gaze did meet one of the others, she saw a hunted look that surely matched her own. Often they glanced behind them, and after 2 hours of riding, Chet reined his horse to a halt. Lauren turned to follow his gaze. At the top of the rise they had crossed, they saw figures on horseback against the sky. At this distance they were too small to be anything more than silhouettes. She could catch no colors in their clothing. "They are making better time than we are," said Chet. "We should ride harder." So they did, spurring their horses to a trot that they kept up the rest of the day. Deep in the heart of the forest it was impossible to see very far in any direction, particularly behind. Turning from the path could lead the horse into a root or a tree, but now Lauren thought she could feel eyes behind them, watching their progress, and it was all she could do to keep from staring backwards as they rode. As the sun neared the top of the ridge far behind them, she searched for a stream. Fortunately, such were plenty in the birchwood, and she soon found one to suit her purpose. Shallow enough for the horses to walk in, yet deep enough the hoofprints on the bed could not be seen from above. Chet saw her aim at once and led them north in the middle of the stream, the water foaming white around their mounts' hocks. "Ugh," said Jem as the splash of water soaked his feet. The shoes they had bought for him in Wellmont were now worn and had holes. "This water is cold." "Mayhap, but it will keep us safe," said Lauren. "They cannot track us in the water." "How long must we ride it?" said Zane. "I agree with Jem. I do not wish to sleep in a soaking bedroll, my wet clothes clinging to my skin." "And I do not wish to sleep with shades lurking in the forest all about us," said Annis. "We will ride as long as Lauren and Chet tell us to." Lauren looked at her gratefully, and Annis gave her a smile. It was plain the girl was frightened, but her hands were steady as they gripped the reins, and her mouth was set in a grim line. Lauren had not forgotten Annis's face in the great rocks when she confronted her mother. A spoiled merchant's daughter she might be, but there was pluck in her. Soon the soft loam of the forest floor turned to hard and rocky dirt. The light was fading fast from the sky. "Cave," said Lauren, "for the horses." Chet nodded and led them out of the water. They searched about for a place they might conceal their mounts. Soon they found one, a cleft in the earth, wide and tall enough to ride inside, and with a corner behind which they could hide. There they hobbled the horses and left them with some oats, and then dragged branches to block them in and discourage them from wandering. "Now back to the river," said Lauren. "Quickly, all of you. Chet and I will follow." "Why are you not walking with us?" said Jem. "Enough questions, boy," said Zane. He gripped Jem's shoulder and pulled the boy along. "Do as she says." Chet had a hatchet, and with it he cut 2 wide branches from nearby trees. With the limbs in hand, he and Lauren retraced their steps to the river. Wherever the sparse grass had been disturbed, they used the branches to brush it back straight. With their boots, they smoothed any soft spot in the forest floor where hooves had left a mark. Soon they found themselves back at the river, all signs of their trail removed. "Now cross it and strike out in the other direction," said Lauren. "Hurry, soon it will be dark." It is dark enough for me now," said Jem, but he had had enough rebukes for one day, it seemed, and he followed Zane obediently. Into the forest they plunged, Lauren letting Chet lead the way while she brought up the rear. Chet knew her mind without having to hear it, and led them to a rise in the earth that could be seen not far away. They came to its base, and Lauren took the rest of them up the rise while Chet remained at the bottom and built a fire. "Why are we climbing if we mean to camp at the bottom?" said Annis curiously. "We do not mean to camp at the bottom," said Lauren. "We mean only to build a camp at the bottom." Zane's eyes flashed with recognition. "We have left a trail to it," he said. "If we are being followed, they will come to the fire, but from atop the rise we can see them without being seen ourselves." "Very clever," said Jem. "I only wish it did not mean we must sleep without a fire tonight. If we are right in our suspicions, it will be many days yet before we can light a fire at night again," said Lauren. "Now quickly, let us find trees where we may sleep." "Trees?" said Jem. "What are we, owls?" "Leave off, Jem," said Annis. Chet soon had a small campfire going, and he abandoned it to join them atop the rise. Together he and Lauren found trees with wide branches that were hidden from the ground, and in them they built small platforms from branches they cut with a hatchet. Soon they had places for the children and Zane to lay their heads. For themselves they found 2 thick branches side by side and lay lengthwise upon them. Together they lay, arms hanging down just a few feet apart, and peered out into the darkness towards the campfire. Though a fair distance away it glowed like the sun in the pitch-black night. All was quiet save for the sounds of Jem and Annis rustling about uncomfortable in their makeshift beds. Jem and Zane rustling about. Do you still think this course is wise? Said Chet quietly. If they have caught up to us so early, what makes you think we can evade them until we reach our village or the great bay beyond? If they've tracked us this far, why do you think we would evade them if we were to change our course now? Countered Lauren. He sighed. Mayhap. Hey, Xenon Quark! But then again, if they see we have turned aside, they might guess that we no longer mean to warn the mystics and leave us be. Lauren thought of Triskin and the cruelty in his smile. Ah, thank you, Xenon Quark. Same cruelty she had seen in Rogan's eyes in that brief moment on the streets of Northwood. You do not know them, she said. They are not the sort to leave matters be in order to show mercy. He did not answer that at first. After a moment, he said, Mayhap this is all needless worry, and the riders we saw behind us are not even following our course. But if you are right and we are pursued, what do you mean to do? Find some way to evade them, I suppose. I have not had time to think that far ahead. Well, mayhap it will be needless. I hope so. Lauren snorted and thought she saw him smile at the sound. Then suddenly he thrust a finger ahead and whispered, Look. She tensed, expecting to see figures approaching the fire, but he was pointing instead at the moons, which had just crested the horizon to shine their silver light across the tops of the trees. Below them, the familiar leaves of home had turned into something else, a thousand thousands of fingers of pewter rather than lively green, swaying in the gentle breezes of the night. Far away they heard the songs of whippoorwills and owls. Prey and predator joined in a nighttime chorus. Lauren let out a long breath and for just a moment felt the tension of the day's flight leave her. She looked back to the moons. Merida the smaller was especially bright, while Enelin was partly hidden behind her sister. Merida leads the way tonight, her lantern searching the birchwood for her mother and father, Chet said quietly. Enelin follows cautiously, urging her sister back home to await their return, said Lauren. Always I have wondered if I would live to see it, the day when the sisters at last find their way to those who search for them. I wonder what it would look like, a sky with no moons. It would be a sadder thing, I think, said Lauren. I think you were right. They were quiet for a while after that. Even Jem had stopped rustling above them, though Lauren still thought she heard the occasional noise from Zane. Finally, Chet spoke again. This part of the journey is not so bad. You are right. It is the times before and after that make up for it. He snorted a brief laugh and then grew dour. I cannot stop seeing the streets of Northwood, he said in a voice scarcely above a whisper. Lauren looked at him. He was easier to see now in the moon's light, and she saw a faraway look in his eyes that she felt far too familiar with. It may be some time until you can. Was it the same for you? That I cannot tell you, for I cannot see inside your mind, she said, but I can tell you that when I first saw soldiers killed by other soldiers, I dreamt of their lifeless faces for days afterwards. What made it stop? Lauren thought of the long road since, seeing many things worse. He did not look comforted and turned his face back to the moons. Seized by impulse, Lauren reached out and took his hand in hers. Almost at once she felt unsure of herself and began to draw back. But his fingers tightened, not in restraint, but in comfort. So she left her hand where it was. He did not look at her, nor she at him. Together they only watched the moons. Then a shadow passed in front of the fire below. They pushed forward to peer into the night. There she saw it again. A dark figure crossed the light, and then another. Now she could see them illuminated in the orange glow. 8 figures she counted, and she caught glimpses of their horses in the trees beyond. 6 figures, because they would have had to split up. She saw at least one cloak of gray, but none of the blue and gray uniforms the Shades normally wore. Still, her heart sank, for she knew the truth. Whoever the figures were, they were hunting her and her friends, and had at last found signs of their prey. A moment later, they stomped out the fire and cast dirt over it and vanished into the darkness beneath the trees. Lauren let out her breath in a sharp whoosh. You left no trail that might lead them up this rise? None, said Chet. With any luck, they shall think we doubled back and made for the river again. They will follow it farther north, and by the time they realize their mistake, we shall be leagues gone. With any luck, said Lauren, but my travels have not given me much reason to rely over much unfortune. Let us wait an hour and then wake the others, said Chet. If we wish to make use of our lead, we cannot spend the night here. You are right. Close your eyes now. I shall wake you when the moons change places. Her gaze followed Chet as he curled up closer to the tree's trunk, propped beneath the branch on which he lay and the one just next to it. Soon his eyes were shut in slumber, his lips slightly parted and deep breaths wheezing between them. She turned her eyes outwards again, but she rubbed her thumb across the palm of her hand, kept doing so until she woke them all an hour later. Hey, Wordwin. Yeah, that was a lot of emotes, Wordwin. And, you know, I've seen enough hentai to know where this is going. The fuck? Oh no. 3241.6. Oh no. That's fine, right? This is fine. This is fine. Italicize. You should almost never use all caps, and I don't think you should ever use underline. unless it's like a very particular stylistic choice. Like okay, here's one example where I do use underline. If somebody is writing a letter in my book and I'm showing the letter in my book, usually the letter is going to be in italics. And so for emphasis in that case, I will use an underline because the character in the book might have used an underline. Like they would underline their own words as opposed to like italicizing their own handwriting. When you're handwriting, you usually use underline. So emphasis is italics. Should almost always be. Um, Opinions vary on that, but I have seen several people who do speak like actually speak foreign languages say that they prefer not to, um, and uh, and so I don't. 10. Fuck ass. The fuck. Here is Daniel Jose Older's video on why he doesn't italicize things in other languages. That's the standard I go with. Yeah. I should probably switch this to... There we go. Yeah, Daniel Older is really amazing. I've added several of his books to my TBR, and he's kind of this. I mean, I guess he's technically traditionally published, but he thinks and talks like an indie. He was at NerdCon Stories last year, and he was just great to see. I didn't get to like meet him, but he was great to see, to talk to. It's pretty great. Yeah, I mean, I think the one of the points I take away from that video is that you're going to annoy bilingual audience members. You know what I mean? Like like if they do speak the language, it's just going to be jarring. It's going to be jarring to them. It's like, why, like even if they know that that's a convention, it's going to be annoying because it's like just on instinct, by default they go, oh, this is emphasized, and then they have to correct themselves. Oh, no, it's not emphasized, blah blah blah. And like, and on the reverse side, it's like, give if your reader only speaks English, give them some credit that they can recognize that that's not an English word. Now, you can obviously say it the other way too. It's like, well, give your bilingual readers some credit that they can see that, it's not emphasized and italicized, but like, again, if italics has a meaning and a purpose, which it does, which is for emphasis, then, use the same rule. No reason not to. I noticed a formatting error in Shadeborn, so I'm fixing it. And it's made me realize that there's a formatting error in WereMage as well, so that's fun. Uh-oh. The kids are starting to overwhelm my wife. Our son Desmond is now firmly embedded in his terrible twos, although I guess in his case it's terrible threes. Shooba dooba doop doop doop. Ah. Well, all of our kids hit terrible twos at different times. My daughter was two. Both of my sons hit it a little bit late. Actually, no, Luke hit it a little bit early and it lasted long. Desmond hit his a little bit late. Hopefully, it doesn't last like a whole year, but we'll see. Last one, so don't have to ever go through terrible twos again. Don't have to ever go through the diaper phase again. We're on the tail end of Desmond's diaper phase. We're just checking off the unpleasant parts. Very much looking forward to never having them again. Oh yeah, I saw that clip. That was amazing. Narrator voice. Lauren gave an uneasy look back in the direction of Cal's council chamber. I wonder if he would agree. Narrator's voice. It turned out that Cal did not agree. I'm going to do the thing, narrator voice. She did not do the thing. Yeah, I definitely feel that guy's pain, you know. Gosh darn it. Hey, Mind God. Yes, I write books. Have I mentioned that? Welcome to the stream. Have a free book. Lauren had often consulted with her during the journey, huddling together over their map, and she had pointed out the place where she thought Yawamba must be located. $29? Thank you, Nightbot. Bump bump ba da 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 dum bump ba da 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 dum bump ba da 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 dum. Oh man, the attention to detail that has to go into a fucking print book. If I still did this freelance for people, I would charge so much more money than I used to. So much. Well, not so much, but I'd probably double my rates. Speaking of kids in the background, that's what we were talking about today, right? Okay. Done with the formatting fixing. Yay. Where was I? Chapter 12. They roused the children. First, who woke with many grumbles when Lauren swung herself up to rouse Zane. She found him already awake and staring at her in the moonlight. She suppressed a shiver. They followed us to our camp, she said. We left a false trail and they moved on. Now we mean to ride on while darkness still hides us. He nodded and rose. They followed us to our camp, she said. When they found it empty, they left. Now we mean to ride on while darkness still hides us. Bum, bum, ba-da-da-da-dum. Let's keep going as long as I can before my children slaughter each other just outside my door. He nodded and rose. Together the party climbed down from the tree to land softly upon the grass. Lauren and Chet led them off into the trees, with Zane bringing up the rear. Her gaze roved the woods before them, searching for any sign of movement. Most likely Chet was right and the shades would follow their trail all the way back to the river, but she was keenly aware they could be walking into a trap. But they saw nothing... They saw nothing all the long way back to the river, nor after reaching the other side. Swiftly, Lauren led them to the cave where they had hidden the horses. She heard Midnight's gentle nicker and breathed a sigh of relief. They fetched their mounts and gained their saddles before making for the river again. Once they had crossed, Lauren spurred them on as quickly as she dared in the dim moon's light. All night they rode until the sky before them grew gray and finally broke with dawn. They rode a little farther still until they found a stream where they might water their horses. Finally, Lauren called them to a halt. Well, said Chet, we have seen no sign of them and have gained many leagues. Do you think they will abandon the chase? I doubt it, said Lauren. We should guess that they will be at least as tireless as we are and may have more so. Then we cannot be surprised, except pleasantly. What do you mean to do then, said Jem, yawning wide. Ride on until we collapse? I do not think that will help our cause. I am blessed with great stamina, but even I tire eventually. Yes, we are all very well aware of your great endurance. We are all well aware of your great endurance, said Annis, rolling her eyes. Never have I called you the Prince of Snores under my breath. He narrowed his eyes at her. Good. Children, said Lauren in a warning tone, I am not ready to let us rest, not yet at any rate. If indeed we mean to lose them, we must ride on at least a little longer. Eat now and stretch your legs upon the grass, but then we must move on, and quicker than before. Well, lots of riding on and moving on. Annis and Jem began to grumble again, but she ignored them and went to fetch her breakfast from Midnight's saddle. Then, because the mare had run hard all night, she fetched an apple from the bag and fed it to her. But Chet seized his hatchet and walked off into the woods. Curious, Lauren went after him. She found him a ways off, looking at the lower branches of a young oak. He chose one and gripped it firmly, then began to hack at it near where it joined the trunk. What are you up to? She said. I hope we have left our pursuers behind, he told her, but then again, they might find us, and next time it may come to a fight. If it does, I would see us armed, but you have no blades to hand, nor would I wish to use one if we did, any more than you. I thought I could make us some staves. Indeed, it would be nice to have a walking stick in any case for when the ground grows rough. Lauren smiled. A wise thought. I am glad to find you so helpful, for I had thought you saw this road as folly. Oh, I do, he said quickly. The branch came off the oak at last. He stood up, measured the right height, and began to cut away at the other end. I still think we should abandon our course and ride north or south, or anywhere other than where we mean to go. But as long as I am trailing in your footsteps, I might as well try to make that road less perilous. Who knows, if indeed they are still following us, perhaps we might find help in the village. A score of woodsmen could help us fend them off in short order. Her spirits dampened and she looked away. Chet, that is a poor idea. He shrugged. Why? They know the Birchwood better than anyone. Do you think they could not drive away a dozen fighters, even these shades? She turned away. I do not wish to argue. Just let us hope we have lost them. Leaving him to his work, she went back to the others. The children sat on the grass and ate. The horses had taken their fill of the stream and now grazed along the ground. Where is Chet gone? Said Annis. He is fashioning staves for us, said Lauren, in case we should come upon any more trouble. I shall keep my blade if it is all the same to you, said Jem. I am still practicing the stances Jordell taught me, but I think I could take one of these shades in a fight. Of that we are all very certain, said Zane, rolling his eyes. Lauren smiled. Though the wizard still looked thin and haggard, it was encouraging to hear him jest, even so feebly. They sat and enjoyed the morning sunlight for a time until Lauren began to think she would have to go and fetch Chet to ride on. But just then he returned, and in his arms he carried 5 staves of different sizes. One he threw to Lauren, and she caught it easily in her hands. 3 others he dumped on the ground before Jem, Annis, and Zane, and kept one in hand. Here you are, some fine walking sticks if we must dismount, or weapons if we are forced to fight. I told Lauren already, but I prefer my sword, said Jem. He nudged his staff away with a toe, though Annis had taken hers and was hefting the weight of it curiously. Meanwhile, Zane had scarcely glanced at his. But a sword can rarely prevail against a staff, said Chet. A blade is a fine weapon for a battle, I will give you that, but if you are not standing in rank and file, you should take the weapon with the longer reach. Fa, said Jem. Do you think you could have stood against Mag if she carried her sword and you a staff? Chet pursed his lips and cocked his head. Mayhap not against her, yet the point stands. Here, I'll show you. Take up your blade and come for me. Jem looked suddenly doubtful. I do not wish to hurt you. I doubt very much that you shall, but move slowly if it comforts you to do so. The boy stood and adopted his first stance. Lauren still remembered the day Jordell had given him the blade and shown him the forms back when they rode together through the great rocks. Jem had taken to the training with gusto, but even to Lauren's eye he still seemed very much a novice. She leaned back, her hands planted in the grass, watching with amusement. Jem stepped forwards and swung, a wide, slow arc that Chet could easily have sidestepped. Instead, he lashed out with his staff so hard it knocked the blade from Jem's hand. The other end of the staff came around to rest on Jem's shoulder. And you are bested, said Chet. Jem greeted the words with a glare. I was moving slowly. Then try it faster. He did. This time he stuck with much greater vigor, though Lauren could tell he still withheld himself. Chet struck back faster than before. He did not even aim for the sword. He merely swung the staff at Jem's head. The boy yelped and leaned back, away from the blow, his own stroke turning weak and ineffectual. Chet flipped the staff at the boy's ankle, and Jem tumbled into the grass. Annis cried out and flung herself back as his short sword flew through the air, landing where she had just been sitting. I'm sorry, said Chet, face filling with remorse as he dropped his staff and ran to her. Did it strike you? I'm fine, said Annis, though she looked at the sword with distrust. But Jem had grown angry, and he leapt up from the ground to jump at Chet from behind. Before Lauren could move to intervene, he had wrapped his arms around the older boy's neck, his legs wrapping around Chet's waist to try and restrain him. Quick as blinking, Chet seized the boy's spindly arms and lunged forward, slipping Jem over his shoulder to land hard on his back. All his breath left him in a whoosh, and he lay there, gasping. A fair attempt at an ambush, said Chet, without a hint of anger. Mayhap later I can teach you wrestling to go along with your sword training. It would please me greatly if you would fling yourself into the river, said Jem, through wheezing gasps. Enough, said Lauren. Jem, take your staff or not as you will, but the rest of us should carry ours, for we have no other ways to defend ourselves. Zane, can you carry yours on your own? I am not so feeble as you seem to think, snapped the wizard, glaring at her, but the weakness in his voice betrayed his words. Still, he snatched up the staff where it lay at his feet, then used it to lever himself up. He stood there, leaning heavily on the stick, looking for all the world like some wise old sorcerer from tales. Now he looks a proper wizard, said Jem, grinning. Zane's frown deepened, and he twisted his fingers. A globe of flame sprang to life and crashed into the ground by Jem's head. The boy shrieked and rolled away. Chapter 12, D! Chapter 13, they mounted and rode on. The brevity of their rest and the long ride since let them all weary, but the beauty of the birchwood in summer did much to raise their spirits and keep their wits sharp. 14 autumns Lauren had spent beneath these trees already. Oh, I wanted to check that. Is that correct? Is a data correcta? Bum 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 ba-dum bum. Bum 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 ba da da dum ba da 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 ba da da dum. Bum 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 ba da da dum. Oh boy. Chapter what now? 13? Blech. I may have to go. See if I can hang on for just 15 more minutes. That's all I need. Cal, so this is 1313? No, we're in 1312. Oh boy. 15 Octus calendar. Octus is autumn. So that's one. The master timeline. So it is now Novus. And Novus is autumn. So we have one in 1312 as well. The sum is 15. I knew it. I knew that was wrong. Why did I think? Okay. "15 autumns Lauren had spent beneath these trees already." "15 autumns Lauren had spent beneath these trees already, but until recently she had thought her 16th. Have to fix that too. Would pass elsewhere, where when she fled south, she thought the force had revealed all its secrets to her. Now it was as though she looked upon it with new eyes. The green leaves, the gentle brown of the branches and trunks seemed more beautiful to her than they ever had when she dwelt there. Dwelled. Not dwelt. When she had than ever had when she dwelled there. The birdsong came more pleasant, and the rolling slopes of land seemed more gentle and inviting. Many dark months she had spent elsewhere in the Nine Lands, in dirty and crowded cities along the soggy banks of the Dragon's Tail, and in the unforgiving crags of the Great Rocks. Now, returned to her childhood home, she could see in it the beauty she had never noticed before. Her unexpected attachment for the forest grew throughout their ride, and it remained with her when she called a stop for the night. As the next day passed much the same, she felt homesickness growing in her heart, and she remembered Chet's pleading words. A desire grew in her to lengthen the visit to their village as Chet wished. She shook that thought off. That sort of thinking had kept him in Northwood for far too long, and it might have brought about that town's death. It had almost seen them all killed, and would have, if not for the sacrifice of Mag, Sten, and Alburn. She owed it to their memories and to Jordell to press on. Once they warned the mystics and Jordell's order knew of the coming danger, mayhap then she could return to the Birchwood and leave in peace, or visit for a time and then resume her journey as she had often dreamed, this time with Chet at her side. 3 days she wrestled with these musings while they passed ever farther east in the woods. Sometimes they would find rivers or streams, and then Lauren would guide them along through the water for some miles in case anyone was still on their trail. But eventually that wary practice seemed less important, and they would simply cross. Soon the land sloped down again, and when the trees grew thin, they could see a wide bend in the Melnar many leagues ahead. That loop is only a few days' journey west of the village, said Chet, and Lauren could hear the eagerness in his voice, and now she felt that eagerness echoing in her own heart. Eagerly, in case you missed all of the references to how eager they were. Faster they spurred their horses on, for it seemed that even the children caught the mood. Only Zane remained reluctant, scowling and shivering atop Jordell's charger. Soon they found a narrow road. It was little more than a dirt path worn by hooves and boots, but Lauren thought she recognized it as the one that ran all the way to their village. At midday they stopped again to eat. Lauren wanted to keep going to ride on until she saw the familiar houses of home ahead, but that was a foolish thought. Even on the road it would take them some days yet to read the village. As they sat in the underbrush beside the path, Lauren felt a prickling on the back of her neck. She faltered as she ate, looking about and wondering at the feeling. Then she noticed that Chet, too, had stopped eating and was looking off into the shadows beneath the trees. "What is it?" said Lauren quietly. He shook his head. Then she heard it. Silence. The birds and beasts around them had fallen quiet. The only noise was the wind and the creaking of trees. Jem and Annis watched with wide eyes. Jem looked as if he would burst, but still he managed to keep his mouth shut. Zane was watching Lauren, his eyes narrow. "On the horses," whispered Lauren. They mounted as quickly and silently as they could. Lauren led them north into the trees, for she had no wish to follow the road now. They scanned all around for another river or stream. Inwardly she cursed herself for losing her caution. If they had kept hiding their trail, mayhap they would be home free now. They found a stream and began to ride south along it. After a time it passed under a road they had been on when a slender wooden bridge crossed it. They did not slow, but rode beneath the bridge, ducking their heads to pass under its bottom rafters. Still the forest around them remained silent. The babbling whisper of the stream was now a grating sound against the quiet, and she was painfully aware of how loud their horses' hooves were. Even her pulse thundered so loud that she wondered if their pursuers could hear it. Soon she grew frustrated. The water slowed their steps, if the shades were close behind, a stream would do little to deter them. She leaned over to whisper in Chet's ear, "We should cross the river and make for the road again. I think speed will save us now more surely than silence will." He looked back over his shoulder. "That would mean turning around, mayhap into the waiting arms of those behind us. Then let us cut east and turn north if we feel it safe." He shrugged and pulled on the reins. The party passed between the trees again. Still, all remained too quiet. Now it was maddening. Lauren was half ready to turn and scream into the woods when suddenly the shade struck. Arrows whistled out from the trees, but none struck true. Anna screamed and her horse reared. Jem barely stayed atop the beast. "Ride north and quickly," said Lauren. They spurred their horses and fled. Lauren whispered thanks for midnight's sure steps. Lauren whispered thanks for midnight sure steps and quick reflexes, but she watched the children's horse with worry. Annis was sure in the saddle, but her mount was easily frightened off, and it tried to break from the others, and Annis had to wrestle it back into line. But it was Chet's steed that nearly doomed them. An arrow came flying from their left and passed within a handbreadth of the beast's nose. The horse screamed and lurched left. Chet pitched from the saddle at the sudden change in direction. He landed hard on the forest floor, and Lauren's heart stopped, but he scrambled to his feet quickly, lifting his staff. His bow lay in the dirt a few feet away, thankfully unstrung, or surely it would have snapped. "Chet!" cried Lauren. She wheeled and went to him, reaching down a hand to pull him up. But it was too late, and figures in blue and gray appeared beneath the trees. Another volley they loosed, but all arrows went wide. Then they leapt from their saddles and attacked with swords held high. Lauren dropped from Midnight's saddle and landed cat-like beside Chet. Her hand shook, but she managed to string her bow. From the quiver at her hip she drew an arrow. With shaking hand she fitted and drew it as Alburn had taught her, but still she could not aim for the heart. The shaft went wide, though it did make the shade she aimed at dive to the side. Then the shades were on them with swords, and Lauren snatched up her staff from the ground. Together she and Chet managed to ward off the warriors' blows. They used the trunks to their advantage, ducking behind them and letting the shades' swords bounce harmlessly off the wood. One of the blades stuck in the bark. Chet lunged forwards and slammed the butt of his staff into the man's head. The shade fell to the ground in a heap, but another came just behind, forcing Chet still farther back. A high, thin scream ripped the air. Jem came running into the fray with his sword held high. Behind him came Annis, blanched with fright, but still gripping her staff firmly. Jem's wild swings proved little danger, but at least distracted one of the shades long enough for Lauren to take him unawares. She struck him first in the gut and then on the back of the head with a sharp overhand swing, but then his companion pressed forwards and Lauren had to give ground before her. The woman knew her way about a blade, and though Lauren could keep her at bay, she could not knock the sword from her grasp. Whenever Lauren lunged to strike, the sword would be there to block it. Jem leapt at the attack. The shade blocked his first stroke and then delivered a powerful backhand blow. He crashed into the trunk of a tree. "Jem," cried Lauren. Her hands loosened on the staff. With a cry, the shade kicked out, knocking it from Lauren's grip, and then she swung her sword hard. It missed Lauren barely, and she danced back out of reach, but then the shade swung again, and this time let go of the sword, which flew spinning towards Lauren's face. She dropped on instinct and heard the blade whistle by overhead. By the time she rose to her knees, the shade was already on top of her. Lauren was borne to the ground, one arm across her throat. The shade whipped a knife from the back of her belt. Lauren barely caught the woman's wrist in time, choking for breath as she fought to push the knife away. Anna screamed and swung. In her panic, she struck the shade in the back, not the head, but it made the woman grunt and loosened the pressure on Lauren's throat for a moment. Then the air rang out with a sharp crack, and a bolt of lightning from Zane struck her in the chest. Lauren felt the bolt through her body, rocking her with a sharp and sudden pain. The shade lurched back with a cry. She reached for Lauren again, but Chet had defeated his foe, and he struck Lauren in the chest with his staff. The shade fell to the ground. Lauren flipped up and on top of her, one hand gripping the woman's throat. "Killing children in the woods? Is that the manner of person you are?" she screamed. The dagger was in her hand before Lauren knew what she was doing. She raised it high. Only at the last moment did she stop herself. The woman's eyes had rolled nearly all the way back, and her hands feebly had tried to pull Lauren's fingers from her neck. Lauren could see where her nails had dug into the skin, turning it an angry red under her grip. She screamed again and turned the dagger. The pommel came crashing down on the woman's head. The shade's skull slammed against the ground as she lay still. Only then did Lauren's fingers loosen. When she looked up, she found Chet looking at her in silence. Lots of looking. When she looked up, she found Chet staring at her in silence. The look on his face nearly made her weep. It held no anger, nor shock, no even fear. It was sorrow, the same sorrow she had seen in his eyes when he sat beside her in Northwood and held her as she trembled and cried, murmuring that it was not her fault. Quickly she turned away. "Annis, fetch rope from my saddle, now." She started to drag the shades to the base of a beech tree. After a moment's hesitation, Chet moved to help her. Soon Annis came running with the rope and then ran to revive Jem with a splash from her water skin. Lauren bound all the shades' wrists behind their backs before tying the bindings to each other in a circle around the tree. When they woke, they would be able to rise if they all stood together, but they could not move away. "It will not hold them forever, but long enough for us to make our escape," she said. "Now get the horses back and quickly. With luck, they will not have run far." Chet's mount had fled after throwing him, but they soon found it a little ways to the northwest. The other horses were nearby, and the travelers swung themselves into their saddles. Lauren feared to look at Chet as they made ready, but finally forced herself to do it. He was studying her from the corner of his eyes, and he looked away quickly when he saw her turn towards him. "We cannot return to our village," said Lauren. "If they followed us this far, it is folly to believe they will not stay on our trail. We will only bring their wrath down upon our home." Chet said nothing. Zane watched him for a moment before looking to Lauren. Where then do we ride?" North to Dorsey, and then east to the coast." She spoke again to Chet. "But that does not have to be your course. You could go on alone, for you can hide your tracks better than the 5 of us could. They would not follow you, and you could return home in peace. No one will speak ill of you for doing so. Indeed, I would call you wise." Still, Chet said nothing, and now all the others noted his silence. Jem watched him, mute, an angry bruise going on his cheekbone. "That is a fine dagger you have," Chet said at last. He kicked his horse and rode north, and was soon out of sight among the trees. "Do not get used to seeing it," Jem called after him. After a long and doubtful look, Anna spurred on after Chet. Zane still sat, waiting and watching Lauren. "Turn your eyes, wizard," said Lauren. "They should be on the road ahead." He shrugged and pulled on the reins, and together they went after the others. Chapter 13 done. And I should probably go. I have held to the desk as long as I possibly could, but gotta go be a dad. And have lunch and do all the other shit I have to do today. But thank you for watching. Thank you for being here as we do one of our final read through. We only have to read 2 more books on stream. This one and Alchemist Touch. We're going to do both of those this week. I want to finish this book this weekend and then do Alchemist Touch by Tuesday. And then what do we do? Then we start the new book. Very exciting. By Wednesday. Very exciting. Very exciting indeed. All right, y'all. I'm going to go. I'll be back on stream for sure at some point later today, but I'm not sure exactly when. Keep an eye open. Turn on Twitch notifications if you want, or just keep an eye on the Discord. I will catch you another time. Bye!